Then right after that, Lucas with the illusions rushed over. Now he understood why he was so desperate, because this attack of Lucas basically left him no way to survive. With a single strike, blood flowed down. Eracle saw the scene of his subordinate being chopped into pieces and was stunned. This was the end of someone who dared to challenge an S-Class hunter. Lucas saw this and just said gently, everyone walks on their own predetermined path, and if one cannot escape from that path, then life will be nothing but a boring escape. Lucas said while glancing at Eracle. His eyes were sharp as if he wanted to see through that puppet his emotions at the moment. Just like that, one life ended but the other lives still had to try to continue fighting. The next morning, JM organization at the office building. Sangu woke up and saw an acquaintance visiting, so he specially welcomed him, "Agent, long time no see." He heard and happily replied, "There you are, I just heard that you hunted an S-rank monster. I knew this day would come, but I just didn't expect it to come so soon." Sangu accepted the compliment from him with a bit of embarrassment. "Don't say that, if it weren't for the other S-rank hunters, it would be difficult for me to do it." Then he saw Uhan at the next table and excitedly went over to greet her. "It's been a long time, what kind of medicine has he been able to make during this time?" But when she turned around, he was scared out of his wits because her face was gaunt and pale like someone about to die. Sangu asked her, "What happened to you?" Uhan didn't answer directly but pointed to the window, "Looking at the situation down there and you can ask." Sangu looked out curiously and saw that the area below was already packed with reporters and paparazzi. As of now, Hunter Jung Sangu is still under the GM organization. "Hunter Jung Sangu, are you in there?" Sangu felt a headache coming on seeing such a chaotic situation. This scene was really familiar. Uhan was about to go crazy. She scolded, "They were so noisy that I couldn't sleep, it's best if they leave at night." Sangu was helpless when he saw this. Was an S-rank hunter being announced so loudly? The agent beside him sighed quietly, maybe, because the one who announced it was Jumper, with his status in the hunter world, this could happen. He hesitated for a moment as if he had something difficult to say, but in the end he still chose to tell him directly. However, the Hunter Association objected, because he was not the only one present during that hunt. Sangu felt a little relieved when he heard that. "I had heard it before, and it was half true, but did I really have to label myself an S-Class hunter?" He asked him hesitantly, "Because I'm still living quite well now and I don't want to meet reporters. The number of people attacking me even when I was still a level has decreased significantly." The agent forced a smile upon hearing this. "I knew you would say that." Then he thought seriously, "Then I will reject the Hunter Association's offer." Sangu wondered, "What offer?" The agent slowly explained to him that they said they would immediately promote him to S-rank if he eliminated all the monsters in West Africa. Uhan was startled when she heard that. "Tae-Fi, don't tell me it's a monster tiger." Sangu was also surprised when he saw her react so strongly. "You startled me, what's wrong?" Uhan wanted to say something but hesitated for a moment before stopping. She turned back to her desk, wanting to avoid his question. "No," he said he would refuse anyway. Sangu saw her like this and became even more confused. "What? Why all of a sudden?" But he quickly regained his composure. "Whatever, just refuse. Whatever the association says, I don't care because whatever the reason is, I will never go to West Africa." But fate played a joke on him. Just a few days later Zinstein informed him that his next destination would be Africa. In that split second, Sangu didn't know what expression he had when he heard this shocking news. He only saw Zinstein looking at him strangely. What's with that face of his? He tried to control his emotions. "Forget it. I knew this would happen. Could it be that place?" Zinstein nodded slightly. "That's right, that's where the next 7 deadly sins are." Sangu really couldn't hold it in anymore and cursed, "Damn it, it's the 7 deadly sins again." Zinstein simply said, "Not only that, regarding the 7 deadly sins, this is also a perfect place to train." Sangu felt confused when he heard that. Training? What training? Zinstein thought for a moment before answering. From what we could see from his clone's characteristics, it seemed like the influence of the 7 deadly sins was also affecting him. He then pointed out his fatal flaw, that the skills weren't working as well as expected. This made Sangu fall into deep thought. He also did not rush and slowly explained to him, "I have said it before, the 7 deadly sins have blocked the system and prevented its interference, so from now on you have to use your skills without the system." He then created a magic circle for him to see but then retracted it. "No, that's Tyburn's way, so let's call it something else." Then he looked straight into his eyes and solemnly declared, "Jung Sangu, you will have to learn magic." Last night after Lucas killed Eracle's subordinates, he angrily questioned him, "You didn't need to do that, you didn't need to kill that child." Lucas looked at him without a trace of fluctuation in his eyes. "But I was quite curious, why did you have to tell him to run? Why did you have to go to the trouble of preparing a teleportation scroll for him?" The series of questions made Eracle not know how to answer. Lucas's face became even colder. "He must have known that you would reject my proposal and knew that he would die like this." He paused for a moment, "Yet you still wanted to ask for his help. Did you develop some sort of attachment to him because you had worked together for so long? Or was it simply out of duty? Tell me." Eracle heard these words of his and just sighed softly. "There is not only one path. Fate is not what killed that child but you." Then he looked at him like he was crazy. "Like the way you became who you are today was because of your own choices." Lucas's eyes darkened when he heard these words. He waved his hand and cut off the head of the puppet that Eracle had created. He said angrily, "Don't talk to me about nonsense like free will. I am the one who believes in true ability more than anyone else. He tried so hard to control his emotions that even his voice began to tremble. Do you know how many times I have tried? 10, 20, 100 times. His voice became more and more choked. Do you know how many times I have witnessed the system swallowing the planet and the end of the world? Lucas squeezed the puppet's hands. There's not just one way, he cried out in a broken voice. No matter who I save, the result is always the same. No matter what group of powerful hunters I create, the result is always the same. Lucas was now completely mad. He angrily tore the puppet into 2 pieces. Then he helplessly let his hands fall. The result was the same. I couldn't stop the apocalypse from the start. Lucas just vented his anger on everything around him, but in the end he sighed painfully. What the hell am I doing? Talking to a creature that doesn't even have a body to carry out its thoughts won't help. Eracle is just a brain. He has no body, no distinction of gender. Hearing these words of his, he fell into silence. You're right, he replied using the puppet. All I can do for you is, I will show you the future. Lucas's mind immediately cleared up when he heard that. His eyes once again regained their original calmness. He repeated his words mockingly, my future, you still don't understand what I mean. This isn't the first time I've been through something like this. In the previous regressions, there were countless times he came to question him, but each time he only received the same answer. I see that the path ahead of you will be an endless vicious cycle and you will not get what you want in this life. Jumper, your ways only lead to failure. In this life, things will not go the way you want. Lucas, give up, there is no other way. Lucas always came with hope and then left disappointed, so this time he didn't want to hear it anymore. I know what you're going to say. Eracle saw that and laughed out loud, but didn't you still come all the way here? How interesting. Lucas heard that and angrily hit the glass cabinet, but he just smiled. You don't need to scare me. I've already seen my own death, but your ending. He closed his eyes gently. I saw it. It was wonderful, a painful death and regret. Then he looked towards Lucas, his voice filled with sarcasm. What a pitiful person. How long has it been since you? But before he could finish speaking, the steel pillars around him began to collapse. Eracle just laughed loudly. It was over, the end of this tangled life. Immediately the surrounding capacitors also exploded, creating a powerful shock that shook the entire building. Only in the hazy smoke and dust did he see a small hand appear and touch him. Lucas. A gentle voice rang out, don't give up, you will find your salvation. Lucas looked at the figure before him without saying a word, his eyes filled with so many choked emotions. The salvation he had been searching for all this time. Lucas gently touched the glass cabinet. No one knew what it was. But at this moment in the dry and dangerous land of Africa, Sangu was powerless to speak up. I still don't understand, why did you have to follow me here? Uhan heard that and tried to justify herself. I told you I followed you to help you. She kept listing her uses. I can appraise items and I can also craft healing potions. Sangu sighed at that. You mean those sleeping pills? Then he turned back and looked straight at Uhan. Hey, I didn't come here to play. You could die at any moment. Uhan heard that and begged in a small voice. Please, I beg you, if I become a burden to you, I will bite my tongue and kill myself. She said sincerely, let me go with you, just this once. Sangu looked at her appearance and felt a little worried. What's wrong with her? But in the end, it's hard for a hero to pass the beauty test. He helplessly turned his head and said in a reluctant voice, then you can't do anything without my instructions, understand? Uhan was a little surprised when he didn't chase her away. She happily said, thank you very much, but before she could finish her words, a loud explosion suddenly came from behind her. Immediately after that, a monster with sharp teeth suddenly jumped out from the ground, seemingly wanting to attack these 2 outsiders. Sangu immediately pushed Uhan back. Damn it, run away. Uhan also knew her limits, so she immediately agreed. But before she could run away, she saw a red shadow from the sky rushing straight towards the monster. Just a second later, blood splattered everywhere and the monster suddenly collapsed. Sangu saw these familiar movements and a voice that made him stunned on the spot, a new discovery. The man in red said excitedly, if you feed the sandworm, you can ride it for quite a long distance. When you feel it starting to go in the wrong direction, just poke it. Oh, Sangu. If he didn't look, he would be surprised. This was none other than the old raven he met earlier. Uhan was also very surprised. An S-rank hunter. We are really lucky. Raven saw him and greeted him warmly. We meet again, how nice. But Sangu couldn't help but laugh when he saw his face. You're such a liar. You said you'd find the elixir. You said you were on schedule. That's why I refused the blessing. He let out a long sigh that made Raven flustered. Oh, calm down. Of course we'll find the elixir, he said, but it's not an easy thing to find. Arya's been working day and night to find it. Then why are you here? He asked. Raven replied calmly, I'm stopping these bastards from coming out of the monster's lair. It's my job to make a living. Sangu looked at the big worms. Did these guys all come out of the monster's lair? He frowned and said, I was also planning to go there. Raven was surprised to hear that. He judged, if it were you, then it would probably be fine, but you should also be careful because that place is quite dangerous. He kindly reminded him, I heard it's not just quite, but extremely dangerous. Raven didn't hide it anymore. That place was a completely different world, ruled by the strongest. It was a place where there was only one rule of life, the strong survive and the weak die. Uhan stood to the side, a bit stunned. How could this idiot befriend an S-rank hunter? The wonderful friendship between the two of them, Uhan couldn't understand it, she just saw Raven shaking her head and saying, "How nostalgic, there was a time when we went in there to practice." Sangu was curious when he heard that, so what rank did these sandworms have in that cave? Raven glanced over, "These sandworms, I told you, I came here to stop them from getting out." His voice suddenly turned cold, these mice were not even qualified to be in the cave ecosystem, just consider them the bottom of the food chain for ease of understanding. Sangu and Uhan looked at these sandworms as big as several buildings combined, it seemed like the next path they had to take would be difficult. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, Lucas was continuously washing his hands, he had been repeating this action for a while now. Anyone who paid a little attention would know that he was not concentrating, he was probably still stuck at the moment the prophecy was given. At that time, that person told him, "Lucas, don't give up, salvation will come." He smiled bitterly from the bottom of his heart, thinking that this prophecy would be the same as the previous ones. How long has it been since I've received so many unexpected things? His face darkened, there were too many variables, the awakening program, the 7 deadly sins, Lucas muttered, there was also the academy, the elixir, and Jung Sangwoo. He turned off the faucet and placed his hands helplessly on the sink, trying to support his already exhausted body. But in the end he couldn't take it anymore and collapsed. I thought it was just a little deviation, but now I don't know what to do. Zinstein, what the hell have you done? But on Sangwoo's side, the situation wasn't much better, the atmosphere had changed. Sangu sensitively grasped that the place he was entering was filled with deathly aura, he even saw dry skeletons hanging precariously on the cliffs. Uhan looked at the surrounding situation and became even more scared, was this place a monster's lair? Suddenly a gust of wind blew by, bringing an unpleasant smell that made Uhan cover her nose. The smell was too fishy. Sangu gently explained that it was the smell of blood. He looked closely and saw 2 monsters eating flesh ahead, one was a weaker monster, the smell of blood was coming from them. And it seemed like they also sensed his presence, they turned their heads and looked at him with wild eyes, then immediately they let out ear-piercing screams as they charged towards him. Sangu also immediately summoned his clones. Well, why do the monsters above look so strange? But no matter what they are, as long as they are the ones who want to get in your way, there will only be one outcome. He slowly drew his sword, his eyes sharp as he looked at the monsters, to see where he stood in this food chain. The monster saw people coming and immediately rushed towards him at terrifying speed. Sangu just calmly approached and prepared to fight. But when he raised his sword to slash the monster, he suddenly stopped. He remembered his teacher, Jung Sangwoo's reminder that he would have to learn magic. Thinking of this, he frowned, it seemed like he had to use the skill in the system, then he condensed the mana in his entire body and concentrated it in his hand, to try it out. Immediately, mana turned into a small ball in his hand. Sangwoo was about to use the fireball skill, but before he could do it, another clone of his swung a magical flame that was many times stronger than his fireball. Just a little bit burned the monster. Sangwoo saw the scene of the monster screaming in pain in the magical flames and froze. Before he could do anything else, the prey had already reincarnated, damn it, he had to find another one. So as soon as the other 2 monsters rushed towards him, he felt that the time had come to practice his magic, so he immediately chanted the spell to activate the ice stone. But the moment his ice touched the monster's outer scales, it melted away because another clone activated ice transformation, not only freezing the monsters but also conveniently blowing his ice attack into nothingness. Sangwoo couldn't hold it in anymore. The handsome man sadly shed tears of pain. You guys don't want me to use magic, right? He swung his sword and punched 3 times, successfully cutting them into pieces. If you can't use magic, I'll use physics to kill you. Uhan, who was hiding behind a rock, saw this scene and gasped, in shock. Her eyes widened as she looked at Sangwoo's figure and couldn't stop exclaiming, this bastard, has he gotten stronger again? She frowned and thought, but what was that skill? It looked strange. Sangwoo, after finishing off the monsters, looked at his clones. Hey guys, Sangwoo's sudden call made them stand up straight in surprise. They didn't know where they had offended this ancestor. But contrary to their thoughts, they only saw Sangwoo kneeling down. He sincerely bowed to the other clones. From now on you are my masters. Teach me how to use that skill. Seeing this, the other clones were excited to teach him magic, just creating a simple fireball. First, transfer and gather mana into a sphere, maintain that state and surround it with fire, while continuously transferring mana. The clone practiced while doing it to make it easier for him to understand. He had to continuously transfer mana into the core of the sphere, that way, the fire created by reacting to external forces would not be extinguished. Sangwoo couldn't keep up with the progress, causing the ball in his hand to flicker and go out as soon as it flared up. He quickly added more mana and said, sorry. Seeing this, the clone slowly asked him, do you want to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Sangwoo heard that and confidently puffed out his chest. If he were to give a comment, it would definitely be extremely harsh, about 8 points. Before he could even say these words, the clone had already shot him straight in the face. He hadn't even finished the fireball yet and he was asking for 8 points? Sangwoo received the hit and covered his face in surprise. What's wrong with being a little confident? The clone got bored and didn't even bother looking at him anymore and continued the lecture. The mana was cut off, now I'll explain it again. Sangwoo, after spending some time with the clones, returned to find his teacher. Hey, you call yourself a magician, teach me magic. Zinstein looked at him with a puzzled look. I was going to do that too, but I had your clones teach you before. I thought you liked learning from them, but it seems things didn't go well. Sangu's face was now swollen like a pig's head from being beaten. His eyes looked at him with resentment. Tell me. Zinstein was speechless. Don't try to imitate his clones. Their mana control ability was much more skillful than his. Sangu painfully stroked his cheek. I thought they were good teachers, but unexpectedly adaptive skills were no help. Hearing that, he fell into thought. I know you're in a hurry, but the skill's power is still weak right now, but there's still a way to activate it. With his experienced eyes, he could see Sangu's thoughts in just a moment. He must be very worried about things like what if he can't summon any clones. Sangu bowed his head a little guilty at this moment. I tried to take back number 1 and separate the 7 deadly sins but failed already. He recalled that he was in the warehouse with no one at that time. As long as the 7 deadly sins fragments weren't here, it would be fine. If he could temporarily retrieve no one and separate the 7 deadly sins from us, it would be easier to use the skill, right? But before he could make a move, the sharp number 1 was able to control his restless hands. Then, no one's cold voice rang out. Sorry, but that won't do. No one looked at him with disdain. Who taught him that trick? Sangu looked at his hands that were clenched tightly and silently shed a tear. Zinstein was also a little surprised. Who would have thought that the 7 deadly sins would react? He sighed softly. All right, I will teach you magic. Sangu's eyes lit up when he realized what he was doing. Don't worry, I'll study seriously. Whatever you say, I'll do it. Then take off all your clothes. What the hell are you talking about? Meanwhile, Uhan was constantly observing every move of Sangu's body outside. Seeing him sitting cross-legged in meditation since a while ago, feeling a bit confused, what is he doing? Is he angry because he got slapped by his clone? Suddenly he opened his eyes, making Uhan jump. He's awake. But what was even more startling was that he suddenly took off all his clothes. Seeing him about to take off his underwear, she quickly covered her eyes in embarrassment. You crazy guy, what are you doing? Sangu also explained helplessly. This was all my teacher's will. Of course Uhan didn't believe it because what teacher would ask their student to take off his clothes in broad daylight like this? What nonsense are you talking about? Unfortunately, she had never met Zinstein before, so she didn't know how strange his teachings were. Becoming one with nature, that was the first step to controlling mana. Sangu was surprised to hear that. Huh? But I know how to control mana without a system. Zinstein was a little silent when he heard that. Oh, then get dressed. Sangu grabbed his clothes and was about to go crazy. You bastard, I'll slap the yellow card in your face right now. Uhan saw him put on his clothes and then breathed a sigh of relief. Jung Sangu, this damn guy, he scared the hell out of me. I wonder what he's thinking. Should I tell him everything? But at the headquarters right now, there was someone even crazier than Sangu. What was going on? Jung Sangu, he said he wasn't interested in becoming an S rank. He slammed the table in anger. He even refused our offer. So why did he go to the monster cave in Africa? Haesong heard that and leisurely replied, isn't that good? We want him there anyway. After saying that, he threw out a pile of documents. Contact the people on this list. The person sitting opposite him saw this and opened it up, a little confused. This thing. After reading it, he was so surprised that he couldn't speak, and his hands holding the book trembled unconsciously. His eyes showed disbelief. This is an assassin organization, don't tell me. Haesong just gave a sinister smile. It's good to be careful. I like to gamble, but I like a predetermined game even more. Sangu was still unaware that he had been set up by someone else. He was still struggling with the monsters in the African cave. But instead of using the sword, he tried to use magic more. Zinstein gently guided him, holding the magic circle steady. Sangu poured more mana into the magic circle. I know. He saw this and said with satisfaction, the magic circle was a form of warning for him, like a locator reminding him that mana would change in this way, to prevent him from forgetting. Sangu said loudly after having difficulty dodging the monster's surprise attack, I told you I know. But then the magic ring suddenly went out, making him even more frustrated. It was cut off again. Maintaining his magic power while avoiding monsters was a bit difficult for him, so when the bracelet disappeared, Sangu was so angry that he sent the monsters flying to heaven. Zinstein could only sigh helplessly. The gap in physical strength between him and that monster was too great. He couldn't continue training like this. Go deeper. Sangu thought so too. He was about to go deeper when suddenly a sharp dart came flying straight at his head from behind. Sangu immediately became alert and quickly activated his shield, but it was too late as the dart had already passed through his first line of defense. Zinstein saw this and spoke up worriedly, Jung Sangu. But at this moment, behind them, at some point, mysterious assassins appeared. I've dealt with him, report to the leader. These are all members of the Blue Rose Assassin Group, member number 11 and 12. 12 saw this and said disdainfully, an S-Class candidate he's not that great, we can kill him too easily. But they didn't know that Sangu was still alive. They only saw that when the dart flew at him, he activated his clone skill, sending out a clone to block the attack. He had already reached the other two in a flash. With just one move, he had blown up the mountain they were hiding in. He clenched his fists, his eyes were full of murderous intent as he looked at them. Who are you? Numbers 11 and 12 were no weaklings either. They quickly escaped his attack. He's tougher than he looks. Number 11 just responded lightly. As expected, it would be boring if he died quickly. The clone also walked over lightly. Are you guys crazy? Throwing darts at other people's heads like that again, I will pay you back with all my might. On the other hand, Uhan was also having a headache. She looked at the pot of noodles in front of her and pondered, how many packets of noodles should I give her? Number 1 quickly spoke up, 5 packets. Uhan was surprised to see him take out another pack of noodles. How convenient, when did you bring it? Number 1 happily shared the noodles with her. I brought everything I needed for camping. She happily took the package of noodles. She wondered why Sangu wasn't home yet. He said he would be home before mealtime. Another clone looked at Sangu as he left, his eyes slightly worried. It seemed like he was busy. It was true that Sangu was quite busy beating up other people, because those 2 assassins were no match for him at all. He looked at them coldly. Any more tricks? All gone? Number 11 looked at the situation where number 12 had just been stabbed by Sangu and gritted his teeth in anger. What a bastard. He shouted loudly, why didn't you use your skills just now? Are you looking down on us? Sangu felt a little guilty when he heard that. He had no skills and couldn't even control the magic circle. Number 11 saw that he was silent and became even angrier. How dare you look down on us like that? He took out 6 more darts, furiously rushed towards him and shouted, you will regret it. But Sangu was not in a hurry. He gently waved his hand, using terrifying speed. He grabbed his face. Then a magic circle appeared in his palm. He looked at him coldly. Do you really want me to use my skills to kill you? But when Sangu swung the magic circle towards him, it disappeared due to the irregular amount of mana he supplied to it. Zinstein sighed when he saw this. He was really, even Sangu was embarrassed and speechless when he saw this scene. Unfortunately, the assassin didn't know this. He just looked at him trembling. I'm dead for sure. His eyes grew even more fearful. If he had used that skill, I would have died long ago, but he spared me? Of course not. If he had paid attention, he would have seen Sangu's face, now black, looking at the spot where the magic circle had disappeared. How embarrassing. He didn't know that he was still moved because Sangu was going easy on him. The difference between us is that big. He cried even louder as he spoke. Are we not even worth your skill? Sangu was speechless when he saw this crybaby. However, since number 11 thought so well of him, he didn't mind adding a little more color. Sangu smiled meanly. Now I know. He left coldly, his long dress fluttering behind him, making him even more mysterious. You are really that weak, not worthy of witnessing my skills, as weak as a snail. Then he continued to fight monsters, just 1 man and 1 sword, but he had leveled the entire area around Uhan's camp. After a while of killing, he tried to open the magic circle again, but not long after the magic circle disappeared again. Zinstein spoke up. You gave up on training your skills. You've been killing them with instinct all this time. Sangu sighed upon hearing that. No, I'm trying my best. He looked at the corpses of the monsters and thought, it seemed like he was wrong. It felt like the monsters had gotten stronger. Zinstein heard that and encouraged him, saying that more importantly, his monster-eating skills were truly amazing. He was getting stronger just by hunting monsters. Sangu tried to mobilize the ever-growing mana source in his body, and there was no denying it, that was true. But after a while he sighed again. The higher the stats, the harder it is to raise them, and we'll have to hunt stronger monsters. Zinstein scolded him with a bit of amusement. His stats were just enough, be satisfied. Sangu was about to say something, but a familiar aura came over him. He swung his sword again, his eyes filled with helplessness, looking away. This is why I caught all those monsters. He looked up and saw that number 11 and his friends had caught up, and smiled. I always have opponents watching my training. Number 11 saw that he was exposed and stopped hiding. Sangu, we have come to pay back the humiliation you suffered yesterday. Let's see if you can fight without using skills this time. His comrades saw this arrogant appearance and wanted to slash him. Shut up, number 11, you should be ashamed of yourself. And after being scolded, number 11 obediently put down his lamp. Okay. His new teammate was very strong, so he didn't dare to argue back, and without saying much, he immediately attacked Sangu. Sangu saw that and frowned slightly, quite quickly. He was furious that he dared to judge him like that, this arrogant bastard. Then a purple mist came out from his mouth. Sangu immediately realized it was poisonous mist and quickly activated the magic circle. He only saw that the smoke was immediately absorbed by the magic around him. The numbing feeling of the poison seeping into his body made him sigh. Damn, this is so refreshing. He got angry when he saw that you were not affected. Don't try to fool me. Then he activated the Great Earthquake skill, releasing magical power to destroy the designated target area. Immediately, giant cracks appeared on the ground around him. Sangu was a little surprised when he saw that. What happened? Number 11 saw that he was defeated and immediately rushed forward. There was an opening, activated the energy bomb skill to blow up an object. He waved his hand and threw a bomb. In the blink of an eye it blew up a section of the terrain, causing smoke and dust to fly everywhere. Number 11 now laughed triumphantly. No matter how strong you are, with my poison mist and energy bombs. But right after that, Sangu rushed out and threw a punch right at his face, causing him to fall to the ground. His companions couldn't hide their surprise when they saw this. At this speed, before he could finish speaking, he saw Sangu create a magic circle right in front of him. However, that circle quickly disappeared, causing Sangu to fall into deep thought once again. But rather die than lose face, he forced a smile. I guess this time you won't have the chance to see my skills. Hearing that, he felt extremely humiliated. You bastard, how dare you toy with us like that? Unfortunately, his life was not as tough as Sangu's fist. After that, the last person who knew the secret of his inability to control mana disappeared. But now it was morning, his clones were still guarding the campsite waiting for him to return. But as soon as she saw him come back, she woke up. Sangu saw that and laughed. What's wrong? Why aren't you sleeping? Uhan gently rubbed her eyes. You're back? Sangu nodded gently. Have you been awake since then? Uhan didn't answer but brought him a bowl of noodles. There's still ramen soup. Let me add some rice. Wait until it's hot before eating. Sangu sat down a little unnaturally. I'll take care of my own food. Hearing that, Uyan's cheeks turned red, not knowing whether it was from embarrassment or anger. But you've done everything, at least let me do something. Sangu said nothing more and just silently watched her heat up the noodles for him. After a while, he spoke. What about you? Have you eaten yet? Uhan answered while putting rice in the pot. I was planning on eating when you came back. Are 2 bowls enough? No, 3 bowls. On the other side of the valley, the assassins who fought him earlier were in big trouble. Sangu didn't kill them, but instead tied up 2 of them and threw them in the middle of the desert. Just this morning, Scorpion 30's assassins, Carrion Holder and File Dane saw this scene and were confused. Hey, wake up, Carrion Holder spoke up. I know your faces, number 11 and 10 of Blue Rose. I didn't expect to see you here. Numbers 11 and 10 were also startled when they saw these 2. You guys are Scorpion 30. Are you guys also chasing Jung Sangu? Holder frowned slightly when he heard that. Same goal. I don't like this kind of competition at all. File Dane beside him just waved his sword. So what? Blue Rose has failed. It's just us. Number 10 looked at their arrogant appearance and laughed. I guarantee you one thing. You won't even be able to see him use his skills. They didn't pay any attention to number 17's warning. Of course not, because he would die before he used it. Holder said in a sarcastic tone. File Dane also laughed heartily. Don't compare us to people like you. But after tasting Sangu's fist, they couldn't laugh anymore. We didn't even see a single skill of his. But Sangu at this moment only cared about the magic ring that had just been created and was about to disappear, speechless. It seems like I really don't feel it, he lamented sadly. Zinstein heard this and retorted, no, he was getting stronger. He explained slowly, being able to maintain the magic circle until the end of the battle was a good sign. Sangu looked at the bracelet on his hand. Well, thinking about it, it remained throughout the battle. I felt more at ease. He looked at the boy's magic circle that was becoming more stable and couldn't help but praise him. Assassins were definitely more useful in training than predictable monsters. It was a good decision to let them live. But then he fell into thought. Did you cause trouble? Those guys just now were from another association. Sangu felt wronged. I want to know why two associations. He sighed. Even if he asked, they probably wouldn't answer. Number 1 and 2, we're going deeper, so tell Kim Uhan to wake up. Sangu took back the magic circle, feeling a bit sad. He wondered if the assassins would bother him again after this incident. You will soon find out, because the next morning, while you were happily saying hello to the world, good morning, your foot stepped on a hidden bomb. Then boom, the surrounding rocks exploded into dust, showing how powerful this bomb was. A girl with blue-gray hair arrogantly said into the walkie-talkie, he died without a trace. We won't let another bastard steal this mission. But before she could even rejoice, Sangu furiously rushed out and punched her. This punch, when combined with magic, had several times the explosive power of the explosion she brought. It was truly a return for one. The next day, while he was out fighting monsters, he was attacked by a clump of vines. The other 2 assassins saw this and rushed forward. We, the Silent Crows, will take your head. So 2 more lucky guys who received a punch from him happily went up to the scoreboard. As time passed, more and more assassins attacked with more deadly skills, the most impressive being the lightning skill of a certain golden head. One of his strikes filled the surrounding air with lightning, which looked very powerful. So Sangu also gave him a favor and gave him a flick on the forehead. Before he could understand what happened, he went to receive a lunchbox from the director. Thanks to them, Jung Sangu's ability to resist multiple opponents had increased significantly, and also, during this process, his magical skills were slowly increasing. He looked at the magic circle that was still there and said happily, he didn't even need to use his hands to maintain the magic circle, but he still couldn't activate it, making him frustrated and scream at the sky. What use was that? Damn it. At this time, Uhan was having another nightmare, only to see a woman calling her name in her dream. Gently as a whisper, Uhan, don't tell anyone else about this, okay? I've never told anyone else. Uhan in the dream was still a little girl. She opened her eyes slightly and looked at the woman in front of her suspiciously. Mom. But her mother was like a madwoman right now, screaming nonstop, but those bastards betrayed me. Why won't anyone listen to me? I saw it all. This scene made her worried. Mom, are you okay? What about here? When her mother turned around, she saw only a hideous face with a terrifying mouth wide open. So what? She looked at that face and was so scared that she burst into tears. She woke up with her eyes wide open like a lost soul. Sangu beside her heard her screaming and asked, did you have a nightmare? Say something. She turned around and saw his cold face like the king of hell, then looked at him blankly. Who are you? In the African desert, the assassins who failed to assassinate Sangu gathered together. One of them angrily cursed, what a bastard. The Vine user sneered at this. There he was again. How many times had this guy tried? Probably his fourth. Someone asked him, hey, did that Jung Sangu guy use any skills? But he just kept quiet. Everyone saw that and understood. The Vine narrowed its eyes dangerously. Well, that might be it. He glanced over each assassin one by one. Everyone here was defeated in a pure hand-to-hand combat. We can't see any of his skills at our level. I believe it would be pointless to continue accepting commissions like this. Hearing this, everyone suddenly fell into deep thought. The blue-haired girl who had previously bombed Sangu spoke up indignantly. I haven't even met that guy's clone yet. This is the power of an S rank. Suddenly one of them spoke up. What about this? We will all form a short-term alliance and fight under the name Jung Sangu. This idea was said by the golden-headed Thunderbolt. Everyone around heard it and looked at him silently. He continued speaking. I don't know how much they promised to pay you guys if you succeed, but I think it can be compared to a fortune. It's definitely not small. We can divide it fairly and then go our separate ways. This is the only way to catch that monster. There were quite a few people who were tempted. The reward was definitely worth 10 times more than a normal commission, so if everyone split it, there would still be a lot of money left. Wouldn't that be a good idea? The blue-haired girl even picked up her phone, preparing to report the plan. Wait, we should contact the headquarters first. But not everyone supports this plan because there is one person who has spoken out against it. You guys are a bunch of useless trash. The words made the surrounding assassins angry. What? Who just said that? I only saw number 10 looking at them coldly. Are you angry because I said that? You don't even have the right to be angry. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes. What reason are you all gathering here and talking nonsense? Do you think you guys are still alive because Sangu is weak? No one dared to speak up because the losers here knew best how strong Sangu was. Then he said, until now, I have completed countless missions. Many people have screamed resentfully at the assassin who came to kill them. I certainly do not try to avoid that resentment, because that is what I must do. He stood up, his face showing exhaustion, but instead of being indignant, he spared the lives of the assassins who had come to take his life, each and every one of you gathered here. He looked at the confused and embarrassed faces of the assassins around him, sighed, and left. I may act in the dark, but I still have faith in my pride. I have no intention of joining a dirty alliance like you. Number 11 and 12 saw this and hurriedly followed, waiting for us. Everyone fell into deep thought, thinking back. Jung Sangu had also saved 2 of us. Holder thought for a moment and then asked number 10, so what are you planning? Number 10. A moment later, he heard number 10's reply, I will make Jung Sangu use his skill at least once for this last try. His eyes flashed with danger, and then. Sangu didn't know their plan. He was thinking about the assassination. I was wondering if it was my problem since this wasn't the first time, so I wondered if this was the plan of that guy called Master? But considering there was no news from the academy, it didn't seem like it. He sighed softly. Besides, there are too many assassins here. Should I say this? It's like they're telling me that we'll definitely bury you here. Uhan couldn't help but sigh when she heard what he said. I didn't expect you to be attacked like that. Sangu frowned in thought. President Park Wante had once told me that Haesong and President Byung-hun were the 2 people who opposed me becoming the S rank. He calmly told me everything, and it was those 2 who tried to push me to this hellish place. Even if they didn't try to force me, I would still have come here. Suddenly you realized something? Kim Uhan, I clearly remember that the first time he mentioned this cave to me you had an extremely hateful expression, but now you forced yourself to follow me to this place. Could it have something to do with this group of assassins? Uhan heard him say that and a layer of cold sweat appeared on her face, but Sangu had no intention of stopping. Tell me, what is the relationship between you and Haesong? Her lips moved for a long time, as if trying to muster up the courage to tell him, I am a hunter. But before she could finish her sentence, Sangu interrupted. That's what I wanted to hear and wanted an explanation, but after he finished speaking, he slashed forward, his eyes showing coldness. He told her, but I don't think I can listen to his explanation now. Then he summoned 2 clones. Uhan also felt something was wrong and retreated. Sangu looked at the clones, number 1 and number 2, bringing Kim Uhan to safety. What about you? Sangu replied lightly, I don't need backup. But when he looked forward, his eyes were a little dazed. Wait, I think I need a little help. Because before his eyes now were a series of familiar shadows that made him fall into silence. Number 10 was the first to speak. Jung Sangu, whether you like it or not, this will be the last time we meet like this. Zinstein suddenly spoke up. Do you want to practice as if this were a real match? Sangu was speechless. Just kidding, I tend to prefer safer environments. But obviously he couldn't control this because in the blink of an eye the assassins rushed up. They shouted madly, today, we must see your skills. But the sharp Sangu immediately realized something was wrong, seeing how they were running at such high speeds without scattering any sand like this. Then he swung his sword, and the shadows disappeared. As expected, they were all illusions. He frowned slightly, right? It would be a big problem if they all disappeared, but right behind him, an assassin appeared. Unfortunately, before he could do anything, Sangu suddenly turned around and used his hand to strangle him. How dare you? Suddenly a bullet from afar hit his hand, making him startled and throw the assassin away. But somewhere in the corner, Scorpion 30's holder was pointing a gun at his head. Use your skills, Jung Sangu. Seeing that, he quickly stepped back. This bastard. Zinstein immediately comforted him. Calm down, Jung Sangu. But as soon as he stepped back, he stepped on the blue-haired girl's booby trap. A loud explosion rang out, completely irritating him. Sangu jumped up in frustration. How could I be calm in this situation? Zinstein explained gently. He had completed all the preparations to use magic, he continued, but I have been searching for the reason why he failed to activate it. He was still using the system's hidden method. He paused here for a moment. Just as he thought the activation was complete, he also unintentionally stopped controlling his mana. Sangu was surprised when he heard that. I did that. Then he understood something. His eyes looking at the assassins became a bit more determined. But they didn't realize his feelings. At this moment number 10 was still confidently rushing in front of him. You still underestimate us. Sangu quickly used his sword to block and heard his teacher say that activating magic is not the end. Mana manipulation must be maintained continuously. Think about it. He gently pushed up his glasses, his eyes deep. You are using the subspace skill. It requires quite a bit of maintenance, right? Sangu was startled when he heard that. But he didn't have time to think about it because of the assassin's continuous attacks. Use your skills, Jung Sangu. They distracted him, damn it. But every time you get angry, your swearing skills will unconsciously burst out, do you know what? But this time he didn't even have time to say anything before another guy attacked him from behind. Luckily, he immediately activated his magic shield to block his attack. Unfortunately, his magic was still unstable. Sangu tried to remember his teacher's teachings. It didn't end after activation like the system. He had to continue to maintain it. But in just this 1 second of distraction, by the time he regained his composure with the battle, dozens of weapons were already flying towards him. These assassins really have no humanity. The battlefield around him has been turned into a wasteland by them. But they still didn't give up. Number 11 saw him flying out of the attack and became even more agitated. You bastard, you still won't use your skills. At this rate you will really die. Sangu was so angry that he gritted his teeth and said, what's wrong with you guys? Didn't you come here to kill me? He cursed and suddenly realized something in his heart. That's right, it's just like what he did with the subspace skill. He found the exit to the magic maze and thought frantically. There was a reason why the secondary skill was not affected by system intervention. The assassins saw him standing still and rushed forward, their attacks interrupting his train of thought. They screamed, if you don't use them until the very end, this will be your end. Then they rushed in, each trying to land their fatal blows, but they didn't realize that Sangu was eerily quiet at this moment. Since he had figured out how to maintain his magic, activation and maintenance didn't need to be done separately, he had to maintain and activate at the same time. As he thought, he poured all his mana into the magic circle, causing it to expand many times larger. A magical fire suddenly flared up, burning all who dared to come near its master. The assassins just rushed up and screamed miserably, it was so hot. And Sangu was so happy that he couldn't stop laughing, and finally, he looked at the magic flame in his hand and felt even happier. He had finally succeeded. Suddenly he felt like he forgot something, until he remembered that he was still in battle. He saw that all the assassins had knelt down. He asked in confusion, what are you guys doing? You don't know that the people here just made a huge decision because number 17 said before, I still have my own faith and pride. I have no intention of joining a dirty alliance like you guys. He told the other losers, I will make Jung Sangu use his skill at least once in this last try, and then I will come under his command. And now he actually did what he said. He looked at Sangu with a determined gaze. Everyone here will follow in your footsteps. Sangu was surprised to hear that. What, you're telling me to accept money killers like you? He turned around and raised his middle finger at them. What a silly joke, but I'll still let you go, because I'm in a pretty good mood right now, so get out of my sight. He interrupted, we are not the last group of assassins. Number 10 tried to threaten. I don't think we are the only assassins trying to take your life, right? Sangu glared at him in frustration. Then, number 10 convinced him once more, we are better assassins than anyone else. In return we will handle those matters for you in the future. Since you have mercifully spared our lives, use us however you wish. Sangu looked silent at his thoughts. Please lead us. The winds of desolation blew across the battlefield. Number 10 waited for Sangu's answer. After a while, Sangu resolutely replied, if you want to work with me, you must be qualified first. Number 12 thought he heard wrong, so he asked number 11 again, what was he talking about? I don't know. Holder reminded number 10, hey number 10, even if the people here return like this, their lives cannot be guaranteed because the commission they received failed. That's why everyone accepted your proposal. What are you going to do now? No, 10 is not surprised to be rejected. If he says we have to be qualified, then we just do it. Those chasing Sangu are also very worried, but choosing to work for him is the right decision. We will have the opportunity to live as real humans. No, 11 was unwilling, senior, but we finally succeeded in making him show us his skills through cooperation. But this isn't any different from the original plan of forming an alliance to attack him, right? Number 10 didn't answer him. The blonde guy was stunned and wondered, yeah, that's true, so we're fine with forming an alliance to make him use his skills. Then where did the assassin who said he wouldn't join the dirty alliance go? Number 10 suddenly laughed, that's why we are assassins. They left realizing a truth, because we're all fools, there's no doubt about it. Sangu was so hungry that he slurped his noodles without stopping, so. Uhan asked in surprise, so you let them go? Sangu answered honestly, I can't tell them, I spared their lives just to practice magic, I understand that, but. He pursed his lips and calmly said, "Everything is as I planned." Uhan is now very worried, not knowing what will happen to them next. The ones who entrusted them are Haesong and Byung-hun. But Sangu still had some questions. Considering my relationship with Haesong, it didn't surprise me too much, but I still wanted to know the exact reason. In the quiet air, Uhan pondered, if he came here as an assassin then, he would have been finished long ago. The problem wasn't him, but this place. The wind blew through the ice trays, creating an eerie howling sound. This was the site of Korea's largest ever disaster. Before the disaster happened, a woman holding a baby in her arms. "I will return later, you know safety comes first, right?" The one who awakened before the disaster. C-rank hunter Yoon Ji-hyun, we will also follow. The man took off his hat in a farewell gesture. Of course, he would never die and leave his cute child behind. The awakened one before the disaster, a rank hunter Kim Junhyuk. He put the hat on his daughter. Of course, he was talking about Uhan. The family waved goodbye to each other for the last time. "Anyway, you have to listen to your mother. Both my father and mother are awakened people. They were the ones who awakened before the disaster. At that time, awakened people were not as common as they are now, and monsters were constantly pouring out. The world made a rule. Form a task force of powerful hunters. They are sent to different countries and deal with things that could pose a global threat. That was how the famous hunters at that time, including my father, formed a team. The tactic was successful, because the team consisted of elite hunters. The number of casualties was kept to a minimum. And their power can be focused on one point, so it's easy to quickly deal with monsters. Accordingly, they easily clear the area around the gate and set up bases to stabilize them. Most of the hunting grounds you see today were created back then. Everything was going smoothly, until that accident happened. In the distance, there were silhouettes of several people approaching this desolate place. Whoever named this place the monster's lair was right. Junhyuk looked annoyed. The smell of blood was too thick. The two teammates, after walking a long distance, wondered how far we had come. "We will reach the center soon." Haesong, a rank hunter special force. Byung-hun, a rank hunter special force. There were also two people stopping to rest nearby. No matter how many times he looked, there were still not enough people. Why didn't they send more people? A rank hunter special force is Hyunhee. A rank hunter special force is Wangyoung. If they send half-assed guys, it will only hinder us. The blue-haired girl was also curious because there were few hunters assigned to this mission, and there were quite a few other candidates. Suddenly underground, creatures emerged to attack people, enemies, coming from underground. The monsters shoot energy from their mouths to attack. One Hyunhee pulled out her whip and prepared to fight. Seriously, they kept coming. She swung her whip and cut the monster in half. They let out a horrible groan of pain and fell down. Before he could regain his composure, something huge appeared from underground. This monster was 100 times bigger than the previous ones, with a very strange shape. Everyone was surprised to see this thing here. This monster is so big, I think it's a level. Gu Jiamha went first. She used her skill of chains to bind the monster. "I will bind it first." When he got it under control, it was Byung-hun's turn. He charged forward and threw a punch directly at the monster. Haesong used his skill to control the surrounding rocks. Damn earthworms. Giant rocks flew into the air and then fell straight down. The monster took all the attacks but still suffered little damage. Hyunhee and Wangyoung stood watching the situation. "That earthworm is quite tough, don't worry." Junhyuk jumped up and gathered mana at his fingertips into a glowing red sphere. "We have someone good at breaking things like this, right?" He landed on top of the monster and released mana right on top of its head. The huge explosion to the head made the monster's head explode. Junhyuk jumped down from the monster to avoid the explosion. "No matter how hard your shell is, it's still the end once your insides are destroyed, you damn earthworm." Hyunhee created a protective barrier around herself to avoid the exploding monster's blood from staining her. As expected, he was strong. Rumors about him didn't spread without reason. "Someone heard some rumors about Junhyuk. I heard about you being nominated to be the next S-rank hunter. Did that get out?" Junhyuk doesn't care much about it, but everyone finds it interesting. "I'm not interested in it, because it just makes me busier." "Just kidding. I want to beat him right now. Isn't that something to celebrate?" Haesong's face darkened when he saw Junhyuk's indifferent attitude, because he would become the first S-rank hunter in Korea. Junhyuk honestly spoke his mind. "I just want them to give me a bunch of money, so I can retire before I turn 40. Suddenly behind everyone appeared a black shadow passing by at extremely fast speed. Hyunhee swung her whip around warily. It was another monster. It was fast. Her whip tied the monster up. Hyunhee is very confident in her abilities, but it will all be over once I catch it. She poured mana into the whip and tightened it. The whip was still pulled taut, but the monster had already attacked her before she knew it. Its attack went straight through her chest, creating a hole right at her heart, killing her on the spot. Hyunhee clenched the whip in her hand, also surprised. Its blow pierced her chest, killing her on the spot. Jiamha was terrified when she witnessed that terrifying power. Sister Hyunhee. Jiamha rushed towards Hyunhee and shouted, "No." Byung-hun didn't hesitate to charge forward and punch the monster straight in the face. "Take her to get treatment right away." That blow was like scratching an itch. The monster was so close to his face that he immediately realized that this bastard, whether physical attacks or poison, had no effect on him. The monster grabbed Byung-hun's wrist hard, then gently threw him away. Jiamha saw that it was letting its guard down, so she controlled the chains binding it and stopped it. Haesong and Wang Yang jumped up high and attacked immediately. Huge rocks flew towards the monster, accompanied by powerful lightning bolts. The monster easily broke out of the siege, destroying everything around it. Junhyuk also rushed forward, wanting to release mana to blow up the monster. But he was like mud absorbing all his blows. Any part of his body that was destroyed was instantly restored to its original state. Wang Yang was terrified by the monster's extraordinary abilities. Such a powerful attack had no effect. It was as if his body was gradually adapting to our skills. The monster swung its arm and slashed at Junhyuk with lightning speed. He struggled to retreat and dodge the attack. Impossible. How could an A-rank team be wiped out so quickly, this guy? The monster stood tall in the middle of the battle without suffering a single injury. It was definitely not an A-class monster. Everyone is injured now. Everyone, please spread out. Junhyuk gathered the destructive mana in his palm and instructed everyone. We will gather at the temporary campsite we set up 2 days ago. At this rate, we will all die. Junhyuk released mana onto the ground. The area immediately exploded, smoke and dust filling the air. Everyone, we must prioritize saving our lives. Haesong dragged his tired feet away from the battle. The scene just now had scared him to death. He could have died. He secretly felt lucky that he had escaped death, if that thing hadn't turned to attack Wang Yang beside him. No sooner had peace come than a monster flew out from behind him. As if knowing his fate, Haesong said in despair, he still hopes to one day become the strongest hunter. The monster's long claws were about to pounce on him, ready to tear him apart, but it seemed that this was the end of it. Just then, a mana ball shot out from somewhere to block those claws. The explosion forced Haesong to retreat. The monster's claws also instantly turned into shields to block the explosion. Behind there was a shadow of a person approaching. Haesong was still in pain from the aftershock. The other person asked, Haesong, are you okay? Why are you here? Junhyuk returned the favor by stuffing his hands into his pockets. Was that his way of thanking me for saving him? Elsewhere, Hyunhee's body was lying on the ground, with the sound of crying echoing beside her, Hyunhee's sister. Jiamha knelt down and cried miserably. I never thought we would have to say goodbye like this. Byung-hun beside him was checking his wound. Jiamha approached and asked kindly, I'm sorry, you must be in pain. I'll heal you. I think you should heal your leg first. But Jiamha still went forward to use healing magic on Byung-hun. He was secretly terrified. This life of his, even before awakening, was all about fighting, and yet just now he was completely overwhelmed. Suddenly a bird-legged monster appeared near them. It went around looking for prey. Byung-hun and Jiamha were hiding behind the rock, not daring to breathe heavily. The two of them secretly observed the monster. Thinking about Hyunhee's death, they knew very well that they couldn't win. Horror welled up inside Byung-hun. Everyone was going to die, and so was I. He remembered Wang Yang's death when he was beheaded, like everyone else. Byung-hun was screaming in despair inside, I don't want to die. Panic took over his humanity, and he pushed Jiamha out. Jiamha was pushed unexpectedly and fell out, where he was discovered by the monster. Elsewhere, Junhyuk and Haesong were walking together, so why did that monster run away? I'm not sure, but I'm guessing. Haesong was surprised after hearing Junhyuk's hypothesis. It always targeted the easiest prey. Junhyuk continued to speak his judgment. The two people who were attacked were both mid-range and long-range attackers. Furthermore, it had not completely defeated Byung-hun. His fists trembled with anger. They were both skilled warriors. Haesong still wondered, why did you follow me? Junhyuk replied naturally, I told you. It seems like he usually attacks hunters who aren't melee fighters. Hunter Byung-hun and Jiamha were on the same path, so the possibility of him attacking him was quite high. Furthermore, the answer was like a strong blow to Haesong's head. He had a child. Junhyuk walked ahead and said leisurely, I heard there are 2 of them. Their name is Junyang, right? Having children will change a person's purpose in life. Haesong gritted his teeth. Don't make me laugh. He was upset when he mentioned family. My goals have never changed in my life. Don't think that just because we have something in common like this, you can act understanding. He had not finished speaking when a terrible scream came from afar, no matter what anyone said to him. That scream was from Jiamha. She was fighting the monster alone. Run. She begged in vain, please, someone. Junhyuk jumped from afar and kicked the monster straight in the face. The tremendous force sent it flying away, crashing straight into the cliff. Jiamha panicked when she saw Junhyuk appear. Oh Junhyuk, why are you here alone? Jiamha said, Byung-hun took the opportunity to run away. That story. Junhyuk is furious that someone betrayed his teammate, Byung-hun. The monster on the other side was about to turn back to them. Junhyuk hurriedly carried Jiamha on his back. Climb up first. Focus on healing your leg first, alright. Junhyuk instructed Haesong, who was standing on the cliff behind him. Haesong, cover my back. Haesong was amazed by Junhyuk's extraordinary skill. He compressed and decomposed the air to increase his movement speed. It was truly absurdly fast. He used his skill to lift the rocks behind him and prepared to attack. I admit, Junhyuk, you are indeed strong. The monster charged towards Junhyuk, probably even stronger than me. The rocks were compressed by Haesong's efforts, and I probably would never be able to overcome them. He waved his hand and the rock flew forward at an extremely fast speed. The rock went straight through Jiamha and Junhyuk's body in amazement. If they didn't act now. Even when he was about to die, Junhyuk never expected that his death would come from his teammates. Haesong stood high above looking down. That monster always aimed for the easiest target, isn't that right? Don't worry. The prey right before the monster's eyes opened its mouth wide as if it wanted to tear Junhyuk and Jeomha apart. I will explain well to your family. In the distance, Byung-hun was running away in panic. Because he was so scared, he accidentally tripped and fell face down on the ground. The pain brought him back to his senses a little, remembering what he had done to Jeomha, me. Byung-hun stared at that sinful hand. What have I done? Someone walked up to him. Byung-hun was surprised to see the person who came, Haesong. Byung-hun asked worriedly, how are the others? Could it be that we are the only two survivors? Haesong is lying blatantly. The others sacrificed themselves so we could escape, do you understand? What does that mean? Haesong exposed Byung-hun's fake face. I mean Gu Jeomha and Junhyuk too. The people he abandoned, all died to save us. Haesong knelt down on one knee, facing Byung-hun. I said this now because Yoon Ji-hyun would probably find out if we returned like this. We're on the same boat now. After hearing Uhan tell everything that happened 10 years ago, Sangu was surprised. Is that true? He asked Uhan. How did you know about that? Not me, but my mother. Her mother went crazy when she found out. She was stunned, holding her husband's portrait at the funeral, and that was the beginning of her downfall. Byung-hun held a press conference after returning. They were all heroes, especially Hunter Kim Junhyuk. He proved why he was nominated as the next S-Class craftsman, but tears poured down his face like rain, because the S-Class monsters there were too strong. The reporter also reported on TV, a tragedy had occurred, where 5 out of 7 heroes, the hopes of the world, not only Korea, died in a monster cave in West Africa. Especially among them, Hunter Junhyuk was known to have a family, so the government decided to express deep condolences and discuss the issue of compensation. Her mother heard the words on TV. She was very angry. The survivors of this tragedy, Hunter Haesong and Byung-hun, said that they would honor the noble deeds of those who sacrificed and would provide special support to the unfortunate, dishonest families. She held Uhan's hand tightly and questioned her. You don't believe that nonsense, do you? Uhan, right? Mom, it hurts. She cried in pain. Son, you must seek justice for him. Please, please tell your mother you will. Your father's body was left in the cold desert. Young Uhan still didn't understand the cruelty. He promised his mother that he would come back. She cried with her mother, yes mother. From there a seed of hatred was born in her. She will seek justice. From then on, my mother continued her one-person protest, saying that she would continue to spread the truth. However, due to the lack of evidence, people did not want her to ruin the atmosphere of the memorial service for the heroic sacrifice. Did Haesong and Byung-hun betray their comrades? She probably wanted to ask for more compensation. Who would believe that? And after 3 years passed, maybe because too many people called her crazy, she often hid in the corner and muttered, Uhan, this is a secret, this is a secret. Mother really went crazy, unable to bear it, she committed suicide, and then, on the anniversary of father's death. Uhan calmly recounted the past. I had to live alone on the streets, wandering around the streets. And then, after I grew up a little, I hid in the Silver Moon workshop to seek revenge. She remembered the first time they met while hunting monsters. Well, you probably know what happened next. Sangu saved her life. After hearing everything, Sangu became silent. Did that explain everything? The reason I had a hostile attitude towards Haesong. Sangu continued wandering in the desert. He remembered what Uhan said. I don't think she was lying. A person suddenly appeared on the cliff, interrupting his train of thought, but she left the most important detail for last. It seems like something is bothering you? He was surprised to see the person's face clearly. Raven, aren't you supposed to call me teacher now? Raven jumped down and landed near Sangu. Have you finished with the monsters in the suburbs? Okay, we've been around here for a few days now, haven't you noticed? I told my clones to only report hostile targets, so why are you lurking around here? Raven looked at him and replied calmly, of course, I did so because I couldn't let my precious disciple get hurt. This place used to be full of assassins, you know, and you're using them as targets? Sangu was a little annoyed by that attitude. You're just observing? Why should I step in when you're not in any real danger? Raven gathered mana into a magic circle. Anyway, I can't believe you're practicing magic. You're trying some cool stuff. Did Arya teach you? Sangu suddenly realized in surprise. That's right, Raven is from Tyburn, right? He also knows magic? He said honestly, dumbfounded, no, that's all I know. I'm glad you're good with a sword. So the two of them continued on their journey together. Anyway, it was good to be away from the system. There was a big difference between magic and the skill system. Would you like to follow me to a deeper place? At the headquarters, Byung-hun received a flood of failed mission notifications from the system. Did all the assassins fail? He was sweating profusely. It was okay. It was okay. It had been more than 18 years. There was no evidence left. Absolutely no evidence left. The ghost of Jeomha reappeared after decades of terror, interrupting his train of thought. What he had done, he had run away from. He was so scared that he fell to the ground, but he was actually alone there. After regaining his composure, Byung-hun gasped, how did things turn out like this? I simply controlled the disaster information as instructed and assassinated a 20-year-old kid. My stupid actions back then led to today. In the desert Sangu is fighting monsters. Raven had a strange look on his face as he witnessed the skillful swordplay. What was that expression? He turned serious and asked, the sword technique just now, is that the Storm Messenger sword technique? I just do what my clone does. He sighed in frustration, that's not the way, your clone learned it and you didn't. Anyway, let's continue, he's really pissing me off. Sangu continued to practice swordsmanship using monsters. Am I doing it right? Controlling the flow of air with wrist movements? He swung his arm to cut off its head, but it didn't cut off. The shock of the sword made Sangu's hand tremble as well. Remember what I said, this is a good place to practice. The monster was now unaffected by those slashes. This was the land of evolution and adaptation. Its body healed all its wounds, preparing to fight again. If it couldn't change, it wouldn't be able to move forward. Raven reminded from the side, now it's your turn to use your magic. Try using fireball on them. Fireball? He gathered magic in his hand and approached the monster. Then jumped away to avoid the explosion. The monster's corpse was burning fiercely. It screamed in pain. Okay? Raven explained their evolution. You hunted most of the monsters with swords when you came here, right? The monsters in the center have evolved in a way that they have a higher resistance to hunters, predators, to be exact. The monsters nearby who witnessed the explosion quickly turned around and ran away. Because other species had been hunted down a lot by sword techniques, they had adapted and become resistant to physical attacks, but not fire. Raven quickly drew his sword. In other words, he could use magic to hunt them. He rushed forward and slashed extremely fast, cutting the monster's body in half. Sangu was surprised to see the ultimate sword technique with his own eyes, or to strike them down with an even stronger blow. Monsters whose slashes only left scratches. The rocks beside him were also split in two by the force of the slash. Isn't it convenient to have your goal right in front of you? My goal in life is to live a life where I can lie down, eat, and play comfortably, not something like this. At the JM branch, the office building was quiet. Number 10 knocked on the office door. An employee opened the door. Who are you? In front of the room all the assassins were standing there waiting. He was surprised to see this crowd. What was going on? Number 10 gets straight to the point. We came to get our degrees. We are the ones who walked the bloody path. The staff was stunned, not understanding what was going on. To get out of that path and regain his humanity. Are you here for an interview? Yes, then please come in. Uhan was grinding bone fragments into powder at the moment. She was preparing medicinal herbs. Elsewhere, Haesong was talking to a mysterious person. Hunter Haesong, do you know Hunter Yoon Ji-hyun? What do you think about the rumor that she betrayed Hunter Junhyuk that's been going around lately? It's ridiculous. Haesong smirked. Hunter Junhyuk is my benefactor, so I don't want to say anything bad about his wife, but just because someone has clairvoyance doesn't mean everything they say is true, right? He put his hands in his pockets and left the building. I heard their marriage was great, what a pity. In the desert, Uhan thought to herself, Mom, it can't be true, right? Haesong killed Dad. She remembered what her mother said before she died. Uhan, only you are allowed to know this. Mother has never told anyone about this. She wearily bowed her head and buried her face in her knees. So, what were the last words her mother said? Sangu was elsewhere practicing using fireballs with the monsters. The fire burned fiercely but the monsters were unaffected. Sangu watched from afar with difficulty. Now these bastards have high-level fire resistance too. Sangu hurriedly cast magic. The fireball had no effect anymore. Then he jumped too close to the monster. When he decided, Sangu suddenly drew his sword. A slash of terrifying speed cut the monster in half. Sangu was surprised by the excellent strategy. Sangu happily showed off his victory, but Raven wasn't too pleased. Did you see? Raven, I've just mastered the basic quick draw, and the mana engine too. Your clone can do better, Sangu complained in frustration. Is it that hard to praise a disciple? If you call me master, I'll reconsider. This matter involved face. Sangu had difficulty pronouncing each word. Master, you called me? My disciple, yes, please teach me, here. While the two were playing around, the monsters suddenly came back to life. They merged together into a monster of gigantic size. Sangu was worried and couldn't think of anything. Master, I don't think fire, ice, or swordsmanship will work on it. What should I do? Don't worry, my disciple. The possibilities of the Scarlet Violent Sword are limitless. You don't know how much I want to say that. The lights are still on at JM headquarters now. Now, let's start the interview. Interviewer number 10 and number 12, you look like a foreigner, but why did you have to go all the way to Korea and apply to this JM company? Number 10 answered honestly, I'm here because I want to work with Hunter Jung Sangwoo. We all owe Hunter Jung Sangwoo our lives. The surprised employee thought to himself, oh I see, so that's it. It seems he recruits foreigners too, as expected. He may be stupid but he's very kind. Number 11 quickly jumped in and was hit by number 10 in one hit. That's right, even though I threw a shuriken at his head. Number 11 fainted. Number 10 made excuses. Oh my god, it looks like my kid is still jet-lagged. He looks exhausted. So, what area are you most confident in? Number 12 has not learned his lesson. Quickly answered and was hit in the back of the neck by number 10. Of course it was assassination. Go to sleep. Number 10 makes excuses for his weird behavior. Sleep is very important. What's wrong with them? The staff didn't ask much and just said, that's enough. There's still one final test anyway. No, 10 listened seriously. We had no choice but to add it. because craftsman Jung Sangwoo insisted on adding it to the interview process. A clone was waiting, sparring with a clone, to evaluate overall skills and fighting ability. In the desert the monster was now extremely strong, Sangwoo could only dodge its attacks, so what's the next step? Actually I just said that while trying to act cool. Sangwoo seriously observed the situation, but my disciple, you have entered that stage before. Raven reminded him of his previous combat experience. While fighting the giant white skeleton, he temporarily maximized the effect by concentrating all the slashes of all his clones in one place, right? Raven was ready to draw his sword too, he just needed to do it 5 times faster. He unleashed his ultimate technique, a 100-fold, spiraling slash that pierced the monster. You show Sangwoo, now it's your turn, my disciple. Sangwoo called out his clone, of course doing it alone was a bit much. At the same time, monsters from underground are also being reborn, so let's try it with some other disciples. A dark shadow flew over from afar. Haesong's subordinates sensed danger. This was big trouble. It seemed that Hunter Jung Sangwoo had become more dangerous than boss had expected. Moments later Sangwoo's battle finally ended. Monster corpses were strewn everywhere, damn it. Sangwoo and his clones are all tired, so these bastards are all dead, right? Raven shed tears of happiness. He covered his eyes and fell down. Disciple number 1 and 2, well done, what about me? Suddenly there was a call to Raven. He informed Sangwoo, it's a call from Heritage, I'll be back soon, what's up? Since this is an emergency call, something serious must have happened, even though we don't know how to use it. He put his hand on his shoulder and reminded him, anyway, my disciple, be careful. Raven warned him seriously. This was already the center of the pit. After the disaster, the number of monsters that escaped from the pit had thinned out. So we'll just keep them at this minimum, but it's no wonder this place is considered an S-class dungeon. He turned around to prepare the teleportation magic and warned, don't push yourself too hard, I'll never push myself too hard. The space door opened and he said his last words, then try to survive. Sangwoo returned to Uhan. He entered the tent, there he was, the monster medicine ingredients were here. Uhan said, holding the bottle of medicine in her hand, most of them have very interesting properties, thanks to them I can make new medicines, adaptation medicines, increase the user's adaptability to external factors, side effects, after the effect ends, all other effects will be temporarily reduced. She handed the vial to Sangwoo to try, here, try it and let me know how it feels, right, the side effects now look tolerable. The two fell into silence after that statement. Sangwoo felt guilty, damn it, so embarrassed, after hearing about her past, it was even more so. Uhan bowed her head and spoke first, apologizing. Sangwoo raised his head to listen to her continue, there's something I haven't told you, what's wrong? Outside the tent suddenly appeared a monster approaching. Sangwoo's clone was on guard outside, and detected a monster near the campsite. The monster is coming closer, I will defeat it immediately. A clone using black eyes. In the tent, Uhan continued, my mother's last words, the real reason I came here. That day, Mom told her a secret, Uhan, only you are allowed to know this, Mom has never told this to anyone. She covered one eye with her hand, my mother had looked into the hole every day after the disaster. The two clones outside rushed forward to check on the monster inside. The monster immediately received 2 fatal blows. It immediately revived the crimson mana in its palm. The clone used black eyes and said, that idiot, you shouldn't have blocked him. The other clone rushed forward to block the ball. Uhan spread her fingers apart, revealing her lifeless eyes. It was only later that I realized why Mom kept doing this. Her mother always covered her eyes with her hands before. Uhan, listen, listen, listen. She gave a strange smile. Dad, he was really still alive. At this moment, outside Sangwoo's clone ate the monster's attack. Sangwoo asked Uhan again with a look of disbelief. Her face was very calm at this moment. Suddenly there was a huge shake. Sangwoo then realized something, number 2 was dead. He immediately ran away from the place and didn't forget to tell Uhan to go quickly, stay there and don't go out. She was stunned, not understanding what was happening, what the hell was happening. He ran out and saw number 1 ahead so he ran towards it. Number 1, are you okay? What's going on? Number 1 turned to him and calmly asked, why did the owner just come now? Sangwoo was a little confused at this point. Hey sir, number 1 told him to look over there, look over there. The huge monster appeared, that bastard is a piece of me, this time I must take it back. Sangwoo didn't understand and asked number 1 again. So you took over no, one's person because of that piece. Why did it have to be this situation? No, 1 immediately explained to him. You changed your tone, I like your challenging tone. Let's just switch turns a little. It seems like he thinks facing that bastard alone is too dangerous. The monster immediately created a red ball in its hand that seemed to want to attack the 2 people. It immediately threw a red ball towards the 2 people, causing the area to explode. Both Sangwoo and No, 1 flew up to dodge it, don't touch it, don't try to stop it either, you'll explode, and the guy next to you will die too. He immediately felt a sense of familiarity towards the thing the monster had just thrown out. Wait, this ability. He immediately called out his clones to help, everyone supported me. His clones immediately came out from a space rift he created, I had to see it with my own eyes. His 3 bodies immediately flew to attack the monster. Sangwoo also rushed forward with his sword in hand. He threw a wind bullet straight at the guy's face. But it didn't seem to matter when the guy put on a golden hat. Number 1 was also very excited, his eyes flashed with lightning. It seems that's not enough, let me add another one. He launched an energy blast straight at the monster's face. Smoke immediately erupted from the guy's face, but it didn't seem to do much damage. Sangu realized the situation and exclaimed, damn it. Junhyuk's face appeared, the situation had become very complicated. He suddenly realized something. Sangu's 3 clones also prepared for battle. He once again covered his head with the mask. Then the monster flew up high and left. Sangu felt a little annoyed, running away. Number 1 exclaimed, how interesting, using my strength like that, is it the instinct of a monster? Number 1 then smiled sinisterly and said to Sangu, hey Jung Sangu, I want to make a compromise with you. He looked a little surprised. Number 1 continued, if you give me that piece, I will help you this time, I will tell you that bastard's weakness. Uhan, hiding behind a nearby tent, witnessed everything. Her hands kept shaking, not understanding what had just happened. She realized that the monster was her father. Uhan couldn't help but shed tears. She covered her face and cried loudly, it was true, Mom wasn't lying, Dad was still alive. It's morning. Number 1 now spoke the truth, the monster we just encountered was my torso. Sangu's face still didn't understand what was going on, still imagining random things. What are you doing? What body? Number 1 began to explain, my body was divided into 7 heads, torso, 2 arms, 2 legs and weapons, each piece had its own unique abilities. Sangu then turned to question number 1, so the names of the 7 deadly sins aren't about sins? Number 1 turned away and explained to him as he walked. Others just name them whatever they want, because everyone who holds my pieces goes crazy, and my body, it has the ability to absorb and adapt, it can absorb and deploy the elements around it and can adapt to different environments. Sangu's face was slightly stunned as he began to analyze again, that bastard's energy was indeed strange, even though I was standing there, but his presence was still very appropriate, Number 1 further explained, because he had adapted and blended in with the environment. Sangu immediately raised his doubts, so Number 1 also absorbed humans? Number 1 thought for a moment and then said, are you talking about the human form that emerged from the monster? Sangu had also observed that face, not just the monster's skills. Everything I hear about him is the same, that must be Hunter Junhyuk, is there any way to save him? At Heritage Headquarters, Mr. Dubert, I'm here, seeing Raven, Dubert also spoke first, swordsman, you must be very busy, forgive me, seeing that, old Raven immediately said, I'm not as busy as you hear. Dubert immediately took out a sword, I want to show you this first. Raven was immediately surprised to recognize what was before her eyes, this was. Dubert picked up a huge sword, Raven recognized it immediately, earthquake. Raven asked Dubert, did you succeed in restoring it? Dubert answered while holding the sword, although it was difficult because its condition was not very good at first, this is a relic of the Urantia Empire, the sword of the late king. The man who was said to be able to turn the earth upside down with just one swing of his sword. He looked at this great sword and said, it's time for this sword to see the light of day after so long. Raven now spoke her mind, I want you to use it, don't you know? Raven continued to talk about her reasons, I am not qualified to use it, I am just a small piece left from the past of the one who failed to protect the empire, and it does not match my swordsmanship, Storm Messenger. Dubert knew that too, unfortunately, I knew he would say that, he immediately wanted to test its power. Well then, at least test its durability, of course I can always do that. Raven drew her sword, no mercy. Hubert immediately reassured Raven, of course, I'm testing durability. The sword was fixed vertically to the floor, Raven was already in a stance ready to attack the sword. He accumulates wind bullets around him. Then shoot out 3 wind bullets at the same time flying towards the sword. He himself had predicted it, as expected, it possessed extreme power worthy of being called Reli. But the sword broke right in front of the 2 people, leaving them dumbfounded, oh no. On this side the clones are breaking the monster's limbs. Then gave it to Uhan, is this enough? She also felt it was enough, okay, thanks. She put it in her pocket, a small plan already coming to mind, there was no other way to lure her father out of that monster's body, a monster that could adapt to its surroundings and constantly change, an adaptation potion was made using that. Uhan immediately fixed the safety rope and went down a dangerous cliff. She tried to mine the stones there, I will use this as an essential ingredient, to amplify the side effects, then reverse the main effects, I am making a medicine that can return everything to the way it was before using it, with this I can definitely save Dad. From afar the monster observed everything. It was morning but in the air there was a sound of laughter. Uhan held the test tube in her hand, tiredly happy. She collapsed, completely exhausted, in front of the pile of test tubes before her, it seemed that Uhan had successfully created the potion. Finally, the stimulant drug was prepared. Number 1 was now searching around for traces of that monster, there was no trace anywhere, not a single rock big enough for the guy to hide in. Number 1 immediately told Sangu to go somewhere else, to find somewhere else, he was looking up and asking Number 1, excuse me. Sangu was tied to a tree and carried like prey. I was very confused, I don't understand what's going on. Please explain, have you forgotten that I saved your life again? Number 1 was a bit impatient, explaining to him as he spoke, Tisk, this idiot, use your brain, right now the clones are doing their job. Number 1 continued to explain to him, the top priority of all monsters in this area was survival. Hunting was just a way to survive. Meaning if his clones kept randomly gathering like this, that bastard would never appear. That's why we created a trap. This cat and mouse game is to lure that bastard in with an easy prey. A stupid prey. Careless, the kind of mindless person like a river shrimp or a sea jellyfish. Sangu now realized what number 1 was planning to do. Could it be? Number 1 suddenly felt something and was silent for a moment. Sangu was still upset that he was treated like that. Who else but you? It was too painful to hear, but I couldn't refute. Uhan ran from afar and shouted, Jung Sangu, wait. She saw him hanging upside down like a roast chicken and wondered, what's going on? Why are you hanging upside down like a roast chicken? He was also helpless and said briefly, you will understand this plan soon. Uhan ignored him and went straight to the main point. Anyway, take this. Sangu wondered, what is this? Uhan immediately recounted, I saw it back then, the person inside the monster was my father. Hearing that made him surprised. Seeing his confusion, she explained, I won't ask you why you're hiding this from me, but in return, by giving Dad this, I've created a stimulant that reverses the changed state. She immediately stuffed the jar into him. It would definitely bring Dad back to normal. At this moment, Uhan herself was completely weak and begged him, this is my last request, please save my father, please save my family. Back to the 2 old men, Raven was still surprised to learn the secret of that sword. The thing I destroyed was a clone. Hubert quickly explained to Raven, yes, I should have explained to you first. He looked shocked. Raven asked Dubert again, how did you solve it? Dubert looked back at the broken sword and said to Raven, it was a byproduct of analyzing the clone skill of Hunter Jung Sangu. Of course, we failed to deploy the analysis skill, but this still helped us make a big step forward in the research plan for that skill. Raven had to admit Sangu's talent after hearing that. That was truly an amazing skill. He was an extraordinary person. Dubert continued, thank you anyway, I have confirmed the problem, now I can have more understanding. Raven now questioned, Mr. Dubert, no one can use seismic skills other than me, or should I make this suggestion? Turning back to Sangu, he was now being turned into bait for that monster. What makes him feel a bit nostalgic is that this is exactly like the bird trap he made when he was a child. Sangu remembered the potion Uhan gave him. Before that Uhan, she created the stimulant potion. When did she create this? He remembered the monster's appearance and Uhan's words, please save my father, please save my family. Suddenly Sangu felt it, damn it, the monster appeared before him. Sangu felt that number 1 was right, he came quickly, I was indeed a great prey. He immediately pressed the hidden switch behind, and the entire front was blown up into smoke. Because this was a cliff, many rocks fell down on the monster. Sangu took off the rope and looked serious, congrats on becoming my bait, you bastard. He slowly moved towards the monster, this time you won't escape. Somewhere else there is a practice match going on, please stop, the practice match is over. Sangu's clone stopped immediately, behind him were many other fallen warriors, you guys worked hard. The assistant beside him was also shocked. His stats were lower than Jung Sangu's, but his technique was amazing, as expected. He's no joke, the weak can create variables and tactics to counter the strong, and he's also shown ruthless power against weaker opponents. Number 10 didn't understand what was happening before he collapsed, blood still pouring from his mouth. What the hell? He recalled the time he fought Sangu. Even though he was allowed to use an offensive weapon, he still dodged all the bullets and swords. Even deflecting attacks from all sides, it felt like being completely overwhelmed. How could it be, in which we even cornered Jung Sangu's original? Pushing him into a corner with coordinated attacks, but how could a clone be better than the original? The assistant beside him asked, Number 3 did a great job, would you like some snacks? Sangu replied immediately, I want ramen. The girl beside her was also surprised, Senior, is this true? The clone is stronger than the original. Number 10 scolded her again, this idiot, think smarter. Holder looked confused, what did that mean? Number 10 had to explain, yes, there was only one reason. Suddenly Sangu's image in everyone's eyes became very bright. Jung Sangu pretended to be cornered and at a disadvantage by us, that was his mercy. Dane cried until his eyes were swollen, yeah, we've always been treated like trash, the blonde youth also sighed. Was he pretending to lose to us because he was worried about our feelings? Everyone was exhausted but still talking to each other, I'll try again, I want to work under Jung Sangu, I can't be anywhere else but here. On this side Sangu was pouring all his resources into the monster, but all of them were useless against that steel-like shell. He rushed forward, holding a magic item in his hand, damn it, he was immune to fire. Suddenly he remembered what number 1 had said, my skills adapt and change instantly when facing enemies, unlike monsters, my strength is not fixed when fighting, however, there is a limit. Suddenly Sangu realized something, his remaining clones all rushed in. Throw a lot of punches at the monster. He did not react, just made a strange groaning sound. Sangu realized his weakness and drew his sword, this bastard, so he can't adapt and resist different types of attributes at the same time. He slashed at the monster, the slash finally wounded him. Sangu saw an opportunity, then he had to end this as soon as possible. He slashed at him many times, number 1 beside him sarcastically said, you guys underestimated that monster. Seeing that number 1 was free, Sangu shouted, "Then why don't you come help me?" Sangu and his clones rushed forward, launching various attacks at the monster. Sangu turned to number 1, "Why don't you help me?" Seeing the monster being suppressed, Sangu wanted to finish him off, he was subdued. Number 1 realized something and shouted at Sangu, "Back off Jung Sangu, that bastard has adapted to ice." He broke the ice and swung his arm at Sangu, he was caught by him, this left him unable to do anything, damn it. In less than a second, its claws were reaching for him, and grabbing his belly, Sangu cursed, "Damn it." He gritted his teeth and endured, it was using the separation, I had to endure it, even sweat was evaporating from the heat. Sangu gritted his teeth and grimaced, "I'll stop it from swelling with my unbeatable body." But the fire gradually caught on, and in no time Sangu was exhausted, "Damn it, I can't take it anymore." His back was already bleeding, number 1 came forward. Number 1 is behind Sangu, one mistake and you're miles off. His body swelled up like a balloon, number 1 complained, "And you just made a mistake." Bang, a loud explosion, the explosion ended with only white smoke remaining. Number 1 was looking at Sangu kneeling, his face pale. Number 1 raised his bloody arm, "You died once already, there is no second chance, calm down." Number 1 sneered, "PFFT, if my existence did not depend on your skills, I would have let you die." The monster was puzzled and Sangu was curious. "How can you remove the separation skill?" "No," one replied, "each fragment has its own ability, and this is the ability of the head. By analyzing the structure of the skill, we can break the monocircuit and neutralize it." "No," one continued, "you only ate a hole in your stomach, you're still alive, your regeneration rate is quite high anyway." The blood flowing from the corner of his mouth had stopped, Sangu pondered, that ability also helped block the giant skeleton's attack. An idea came to him, then every time something like that happens, you just have to get rid of it, you get punched just by saying it. Sangu was wronged. Why did you hit me?" Number 1 despised him, "You useless thing, don't you know how to do anything other than depend on others?" Meanwhile, the monster rushed over, Sangu reacted quickly and immediately blocked the attack, he even said loudly, "Exactly, I am that kind of person." The monster collapsed. "No," one continued, "see, with that stat, you don't need to risk your life like with the giant white skeleton, but why aren't you concentrating at all?" Question number 1, Sangu answered bluntly, "For me, I must kill this monster." Elsewhere, white mice in glass cages lay half dead, half alive, and a sound echoed nearby, "Here." Travor fearfully handed over the tray of depth that he had requested. Haesong looked at the tube of medicine, then picked up the timid mouse in the cage. Pour the medicine directly into its mouth. Travor stood still, watching the rat squeal loudly in shock. Then it screamed out of control, its fur stiffened, its pupils turned blue, its eyes went crazy. Haesong immediately burned it, he was annoyed, "Are you kidding me? It was a defective product." Travor sweated, he continued, "There were only 2 finished prototypes that could prevent the monster from turning into one. I don't have enough time to complete the remaining samples." Travor hesitated, but the mouse that was thought to be dead came back to life and bit Haesong's wrist. He was surprised, Travor explained, "However, the stat-boosting ability of these defective products could not compare to the previous one." Travor continued, "If I had more time, I would have turned them into something." Haesong rolled his eyes and interrupted, No need for the finished version, just produce this one." He complained, "He should have given me something like this from the beginning." There was a loud noise outside, and large rocks collapsed. Jung Sangwoo was shocked. She fell into thought, they were fighting. Well, maybe getting someone to take medicine while fighting was quite difficult. But then she realized, wait, what if the medicine bottle breaks during the fight? Jung Sangwoo immediately rummaged through his bag. He made a few more from the leftover ingredients. Ah, here they are. Seeing Uhan's luggage ready, the clone wondered, where are you going? Bring this to Jung Sangwoo, the supplement. He continued, let me give it to you, but Uhan refused. I need to test the effectiveness of the medicine, so please let me go. The clone is powerless, I won't stop you but think carefully. The two stood before the ruins. The clone wanted Uhan to confirm carefully. Was she sure she wanted to go there? Continuous tremors were generated from the two sides match. The monster is trying to create a magic sphere. Number 1 despises, you fool, you can adapt but can't learn anything. Thunder meets wind, both rush into each other. Sangwoo gripped the sword tightly. Number 2, enchanted, fire surrounded the sword. He rushed up and attacked. The severed head is Uhan's father with black eyes. Sangwoo gritted his teeth. Recalling the past, Sangwoo nervously asked the person in front of him, the skills in the story I heard were completely identical, that was definitely the craftsman Junhyuk. Was there any way to save that person? The hesitant sword severed the monster's left shoulder. It is trying to find a way out. But on top of the icebergs were sealed. It's panic, Sangwoo said calmly, there's no way out. A few minutes ago, Sangwoo and No one were discussing, save the guy inside, you must have misunderstood something. And then as planned, Number 1 climbed onto the monster's back. He let down the lightning, causing it to screech. The first step is done, Number 1 reports, we have him under temporary control, his adaptive skills are locked so he won't be able to resist. After Number 1 jumped out, the other clones also used ice to hold the monster back. Sangwoo rushed over. Uhan's plea, this is my last request, please, save my father, save my only family. Sangu looked serious. I'm sorry. The monster stood still and took it. A scream rang out, stopping. The sword tip that was about to kill the monster had to stop. It was Uhan, fumbling on the stone pillar, carrying stones? What? Then fell down and landed on his butt. Uhan was stunned. Why did you point your sword at my father? You said you would save him, my father. Number 1 looked towards Sangu. He kept showing that strange expression. Sangu was face to face with the monster Uhan's father, was that so? He was silent. Uhan stuttered. Oh, you broke the medicine bottle, right? I brought a spare, hee. I made an extra one just in case. Sangu interrupted. I have, he said bluntly, Jung Sangu. Sangu looked at the monster before her. This was not her father, it was just a monster. He continued, this appearance is due to the transformation skill. It doesn't control Hunter Junhyuk or anything. If you give it medicine, it will just turn back into a normal monster like the others. The truth sometimes hurts. Uhan trembled. Oh, I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean monster? After the battle was in Sangu's favor, he rushed forward to finish off the monster but stopped because of Uhan's cry. Uhan begged. It wasn't a monster, it was my father. I only met him when I was little, but his image was still vivid in my mind. Uhan shouted. He looked exactly like he did back then. Sangu continued. Same? He continued. It's been 18 years and his appearance hasn't changed at all. Isn't that strange? Uhan was speechless. Number 1 came at the same time. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, you wouldn't believe it. Move aside, Jung Sangu. Number 1 spell. I'll get my transformation ability back anyway. One slash cut its body in half. The monster screamed. Uhan cried and begged, don't. Black cells covered the face of the man Uhan called father. In an instant, that face suddenly became unfamiliar. A girl with blue hair. Uhan was stunned on the spot. Number 1 sneered. This is your relative too. Sangu also gritted his teeth. The monster was recovering. Number 1 turned to look at Uhan. Why is it silent? I ask, is this your relative? Blue hair fluttered in the wind. Sangu was curious. Was this person also part of the special forces? Number 1 denied. Who knows? This monster changes its appearance every time it gets injured. It hides it so well that no one would recognize it. The monster recovered, returning to Junhyuk's appearance. Number 1 said, it seems like it's done healing. Kill it quickly, otherwise, it will quickly adapt to the ice element and escape. Sangu clearly heard it but still hesitated. Little hands are trying to open the medicine bottle. Wait a minute. Uhan pleaded with tears of sorrow. Give him the remaining medicine while he was in my father's form, remember? What if he was really my father? Still not 100% sure. Quick steps. Number 1 kicked Uhan in the stomach. Sangu was confused. Hey, what are you doing? Sweat rolled down Sangu's nose as he accidentally saw something. Uhan lay on the ground in pain. Grunted. Number 1 commented. I hate people like you the most. He continued. You have done nothing but stubbornly refuse to acknowledge the truth that is right in front of you. You can only say begging but cannot say anything in return. The words no, one said were crude but true. If you had at least raised your weapon, I would not have mocked you. Uhan looked painfully at the broken medicine bottle before her eyes. No, my medicine. Number 1 said loudly. Go away, you'll only get in the way. Whose muddy feet are passing by? One kick didn't have time to react. Number 1 grumbled. What are you doing? Jung Sangu. It turned out that the monster with Junhyuk's head stood up to protect Uhan. No, one was angry. I told you to kill that monster. Uhan stuttered. Father. Number 1 sighed. That's a monster. Oh well, never mind. No need to explain too much. The monster opened its mouth wide, preparing to swallow Uhan. Dying in one's own delusion might also be a kind of blessing. Luckily Sangu stopped it in time. Stop, answer me, the 7 deadly sins. Sangu continued. You said that the monster took the form of San Junhyuk the craftsman to use its skills, right? So that means the recreated body will have the same memories in body as San Junhyuk the craftsman. Number 1 nodded. Yes, it will rewire the brain to use the skills, so what? The monster charged. Number 1 complained. The monster was just following its instincts. Sangu also charged forward, so please use your skills. Isolate the part of the body that contains the form of the craftsman San Junhyuk and cut off the rest, he continued. He said he could sever the Manhwa circuit. Number 1 was surprised. Then he asked Sangu, why should we make a request that is both troublesome and has the potential to have no effect? He sighed. This wasn't a request. Sangu pouted and pretended not to want to anymore. If you don't want to do it, then forget it. I give up too. Forget the 7 deadly sins. No more negotiations. We don't have to defeat this monster anyway. So why should I suffer like this? Number 1 was agitated. He continued on. You're the one who should be in a hurry, not me. Lieber inside froze. Are you kidding me? Sangu continued in a mocking tone. Come on, Number 1. Let's go outside. The 7 deadly sins wanted to get some fresh air. As expected, the provocation was successful. Number 1 gritted his teeth. You, bastard. Number 1 angrily charged towards the monster. If things get out, don't blame me. And landed on top of it. Sangu shielded himself from the wind, thinking as he shielded himself, actually, I don't know if this will work. I don't know how this monster's instincts will react, but... Flashback a few minutes before number 1 kicked Uhan, Sangu was confused. Hey. What are you doing? And then Sangu was shocked by the image of the monster with Junhyuk's face grimacing at the sight of Uhan being injured. Back to the present, Sangu was holding Uhan steady and observing the situation. There was no other way, he had to try to find out. Number 1 pressed down, the black layers around the body gradually dissipated. The intensity of the separation became higher and higher, and Junhyuk's body became more visible. Moments later, number 1 successfully separated, and both Junhyuks were lying on the ground. Then he opened his eyes, he woke up in a hurry, gasping for breath, then he shouted, "Jiamha, are you okay? Jiamha, where are we? The wound on my chest is gone, even my clothes are different." The sound came, "Dad, do you recognize me?" Junhyuk was confused. Uhan pursed her lips, "Father, do you know who I am?" Junhyuk was silent, then he replied, "Uhan." She was surprised, and shed tears of happiness. "Yes, that's right." She looked at her seemingly dead father and replied, "It's me, father." There were now 2 versions of the monster. One was the fake Uhan father sitting on the ground and the other was the monster sitting silently in the back. Number 1 froze, "It worked," Sangu continued. "See, I told you, how would you know if you don't try?" That's why number 1 was even more confused. "I still don't understand, it's still a monster. She must know that too," he continued. "It looks like her father, but in fact it's the one who killed her father." Sangu paused for a moment, then he replied, "Have you heard the story of the ship of Theseus?" He continued, "Suppose we replace the old planks with new ones, and if we keep replacing them until there are no more old planks left, will it still be the ship of Theseus? Even if the appearance is the same, but if the materials are different, is it still the same old ship?" Number 1 sarcastically said, "Idiot, how can there be a definite answer to that question?" And that sarcasm just happened to be the opening line for the explanation, right, so the creature didn't need that answer right now. Number 1 is confusing, "What do you mean?" Sangu smiled, "Do we need to judge whether Hunter Junhyuk is a monster or a human based on our standards alone?" The light emitted softly from the remains of the monster. Sangu calmly, "Simply, yes, even fake warmth still soothes a person's loss. Some people just want to see the ship again." The warmth from his family made Uhan unable to hold back her tears of happiness. Junhyuk smiled, "You've really grown up." Uhan sobbed, "I thought you wouldn't recognize me." Junhyuk smiled, "How could you not recognize me?" Shooting star eyes, smiling innocently, "But you really have grown up so much, I'm telling the truth." He asked Uhan, "How long has it been?" She hesitated, "That. Sangu, come here, I will tell you." Sangu bowed, "Nice to meet you, Hunter Junhyuk, you were captured by a monster." Moments later, everyone was moving towards the plane. Junhyuk exclaimed in panic, "So in short, a monster captured me and you were the one who rescued me?" Sangu nodded, "Yes." Number 1 sighed, "Good liar." Junhyuk carefully listened for information, "And it's been 18 years already?" Then, "My wife, how is Jihyun?" Uhan was startled, she stood up in panic, "What? That, Mom." The phone was brought. Sangu explained, "You can check it yourself. These are the relevant reports as they happen." The article is as follows: A disaster happened to the hunters sent to the monster dungeon. What was the cause? 6 heroes, tragedy for the victims' families. Junhyuk, Hunter Yoon Jihyun died. Haesong and Byunghun spoke. "We should have been the ones who died there. We are so sorry and sad about what happened." The flood of information overloaded Junhyuk's brain. And then, the article with the headline Hunter Kim Junhyuk's wife, Hunter Yoon Jihyun was found dead. Hunter Kim Junhyuk's wife, the one who lost her husband, the one who faced a terrible accident. She made an extreme choice. Junhyuk froze. Uhan asked worriedly, "Father, father." Junhyuk clenched his phone in his hand. He didn't need to say anything more. He asked him, "Your name is Jung Sangwoo, right?" Sangwoo replied, "Yes." Junhyuk's anger boiled over. He angrily asked Sangwoo, "The 2 bastards who betrayed the team that day, Haesong and Byunghun, where are they?" Sangwoo was surprised. Was he going to kill the 2 of them? Junhyuk answered with a grudge, "Yes." Sangwoo asked again, "Are you sure?" Junhyuk cut him off, "Don't even think about convincing me, I will now." Sangwoo continued, "That's not what I meant." Sangwoo looked at the man in front of him and asked seriously, "Are you sure you want to let them go that easily?" Junhyuk was surprised. Then he explained, "I have a suggestion. After listening to me, it is not too late for you to make a decision." The crowd was noisy, with the majority of them being reporters. The reason for that was Hunter Jung Sangwoo holding a press conference? Didn't he always avoid reporters? The other person replied, "Well, he probably won't let it go this time, if he really can defeat an S-class monster. Sangwoo with his elegant appearance and black suit is walking over, then he will be officially recognized as an S-rank hunter." He tried speaking into the microphone, nice to meet the reporters. The cameras started flashing, "Thank you everyone for coming here." Sangwoo frowned, "All the people who caused me trouble at the jumper building were here too." After he had finished joking around, he returned to the main topic, "Well, as everyone knows, I've been in the monster pit lately." Sangwoo slammed his hand down, and as expected, there was an S-class monster there. The reporters were stunned by this breaking news. A reporter reached up, "Then you did?" Sangwoo replied, "I caught the monster." He continued, "Of course there was some hindrance, but I wanted to let everyone know, I was the one who captured the S-Class monster. The reporter exclaimed, so that means Hunter Jung Sangu will be the first S-rank hunter in. She was interrupted. Wait. It's the two criminals Haesong and Byung-hun. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your safe return, Hunter Jung Sangu. You've really returned safely. The photographers jumped in. It was the president of the Hunter Association Byung-hun and Haesong, from the Haesong Guild. Amazing. Byung-hun is a cunning man. We said that we would recognize you as an S-Class hunter if you could handle an S-Class monster in the monster pit, but the most important thing is proof, right? Otherwise, it would be difficult for us to accept your claims, Sangu mused. I knew they would show up. Haesong next to him also joined in the sarcasm. At least there should be a video. Don't tell me you think we'll believe your empty words. Sangu chuckled. Evidence? Right, of course, without evidence, I wouldn't hold a press conference. You two are so funny. Sangu lifted his leg and approached Haesong with a smug look on his face. Of course I did. I still have all the evidence to prove your dirty deeds 18 years ago. Both were stunned. Sangu sternly, I will give you two a chance to confess everything yourselves. Tell them everything you did in the monster pit. Check all the facts that happened back then. Byung-hun panicked with every word Sangu said. He put his hand on Haesong's shoulder. If you two do that then I won't say anything and won't give any evidence. And whisper in his ear, but if you try to do anything other than apologize, the evidence will be shown to the world. Haesong turned around. Are you done talking? Then laughed out loud. What? Proof. While Haesong was reacting fiercely, Byung-hun cowered to the side and said nothing. What did I do wrong that I have to confess? You're just talking nonsense because there's no evidence that you caught an S-Class monster. Do you think you can fool me? Sangu waved his hand and sighed. How pitiful. His loud laughter made Haesong tremble with anger. What is this? Sangu sneered. He was good at acting innocent, but how pitiful. Now that he had finished his sarcasm, Sangu continued with a wry smile. I don't care about the hunter industry, but if someone like me appeared and touched your weak spot, do you think it would be a lie? Footsteps moved. The reporters were stunned. A familiar figure, a familiar voice. Should I start with long time no see? Byung-hun and Haesong were motionless. Bare hands adjusted the microphone. Kim Junhyuk, who was standing on the podium, spoke up in person. Both of them have aged a lot, haven't they? This is all so fresh. Should we start by revealing the truth about what happened that day? The camera and microphone turned to him. Hey, film this again, hurry. Kim Junhyuk and the truth revealed 18 years ago gradually unfold. Hello, I am Junhyuk. I was trapped by an S-Class monster for 18 years and was able to miraculously return with the help of Hunter Jung Sangu. What I am about to say is all true. Haesong and Byung-hun are not heroes. The people who watched the news were shocked. At Hyeon's place, is he really back? What's going on? The person on the other side stammered. I just got in touch too. The news continued to air. They were the ones who abandoned their comrades when they needed them most. At Junyoung's place, he was practicing hard, and then he came back and stole the work of his teammates, things that didn't belong to him. Or Yeon, the girl who had to swallow the truth for many years. My wife tried her best to reveal the truth recently, but I heard that she couldn't bear the pressure from the people around her. Now I will try to fix it. Kim Junhyuk with a determined look. I will make them pay. The news has caused a lot of people to talk. Hey, did you see? Hunter Junhyuk has returned alive. Who is Junhyuk? You idiot, don't you know who was the strongest in the special forces long ago? I heard Hyeosung and Byung-hun betrayed them and escaped. Oh my. So what his wife said back then was true. The sarcasm and insults sent to Byung-hun and Hyeosung in the face of irony. I knew it. I already felt strange when only those two returned. What a bunch of bastards. Elsewhere, on the table was a steaming pot of delicious hot pot. Junhyuk asked, confused, what is this? Uhan happily replied, we have to eat, even though they deliver from the restaurant, Junhyuk said in surprise. Now people deliver food too? The world has gotten better, hasn't it? He picked up a piece and opened his eyes wide in admiration. It was so delicious. Uhan smiled and asked, hee, right? Junhyuk suddenly remembered something and said, oh, can you teach me how to use a smartphone? It's so convenient now. Uhan spoke softly, give it to me. I'll save my number to your phone first. She continued in a low voice, now that there's internet, there's no charge, you can use it freely. He asked suspiciously, is that so? You won't be forced to pay a lot of money later, will you? Uhan replied softly, no. On Uhan's note, a checkmark was added to the box for eating together, leaving 3 things left, visiting mother's grave, going to the amusement park, and going to the movies. On the newspapers and TV, Kim Junhyuk's image was being shown. The MIG began to report that something extraordinary had happened. Hunter Junhyuk, who was thought to be dead, had come back to life after 18 years. What was even more surprising was that the cause of the disaster was the betrayal of Hunters Byung-hun and Haesong. The police stormed into the warehouse to arrest the gang bosses, making them scream, stop taking pictures. The reporter continued to report the betrayal that Hunter Ji-hyun insisted on. Even if she died, the return of Hunter Kim Junhyuk brought great power to the forgotten accusation. The image of the silver-haired boss covering his face with his hands in humiliation was captured, accompanied by the announcer's monotone voice. Until now, Hunter Haesong and Oh Byung-hun have not given an answer. At the same time in another place, on the table were displayed various expensive bottles of wine. A voice rang out, give this one. Haesong spoke in a low voice, for each branch of the Haesong Guild. His subordinate hesitantly asked, "May I ask what this is?" Haesong glanced at him with a fearful expression and slowly replied, "It was wine." He said in a meaningful tone, "Don't worry, I heard that drinking alcohol also has an effect." The subordinate asked again in confusion, "Huh?" Suddenly there was a loud noise that made him jump. The subordinate's whole body was now covered with strange black stains. He put his hand on the table and said tremblingly, "I will go distribute it right away." Haesong said coldly, "Go." As soon as he finished speaking, the subordinate quickly walked out of the room and slammed the door shut. The black water stains on the floor began to smoke and sizzle. Suddenly Jinnik opened the door and shouted in panic, "Dad, no, President, reporters are everywhere." He asked worriedly, "What should we do?" "Huh, where is the table?" Haesong stood still and calmly looked out the large glass door. He said in a low voice, "If you want to plant trees, you must plow the land first." Haesong calmly spoke up, "Jinnik, tell all the members of the Haesong Guild this." He gave a strange smile and said meaningfully, "Prepare the farewell party." "I will surrender myself." Jinnik asked in surprise, "What?" At the same time elsewhere, the agent sitting on the chair clenched his teeth and trembled as he said, "Damn it, what is going on?" He asked Sangu doubtfully. Not only did he bring back Hunter Junhyuk, but he also dropped a bomb at the press conference. Sangu calmly replied, "He must have been shocked." The agent widened his eyes in surprise and stammered, "Of course, Hunter Kim Junhyuk has been a legend since I was a student. Furthermore, Miss Uhan is actually his daughter. I finally understand why she insisted on going into the monster pit with you." He immediately asked, "What are you going to do now?" Sangu thought for a moment then spoke, "Well, the most important thing is Hunter Kim Junhyuk's opinion so." Suddenly number one from behind coldly interrupted the conversation of the two, "Don't waste any more time." The agent was stunned and said softly, "Number one." Sangu immediately explained, "No, it was the 7 deadly sins talking." Number one urged, "How long are you going to leave my fragments scattered around? If you want revenge, do it quickly." Sangu quickly objected, "Hey, there has to be an order to everything. If we kill those two, we'll be branded as murderers." Number one still kept a cold attitude and replied, "Does that matter? That guy doesn't have much time left." Sangu frowned and remained silent when he heard that. The agent also asked in confusion, "What are you talking about? Who doesn't have much time?" Number one turned to Sangu and asked doubtfully, "You still haven't told him?" He remembered the happy moment between Junhyuk and his father and spoke coldly, "Because what I did to that monster was not permanent, he would soon collapse and disappear." Junhyuk's smiling face was captured in close-up. Number one continued slowly, "My ability doesn't last forever, you know that." In the large banquet hall, everyone was already there and whispering to each other, "Hey, is that right? You mean the chairman's farewell party? Why did he suddenly gather everyone like this?" A man wearing a white armband spoke softly, "I heard he was going to turn himself in. Does that mean it's all true?" The short-haired woman sitting next to him groaned, "This is crazy. Our association is really broken. Who's going to take over?" The Haesong Guild was still in a heated discussion. Would team leader Shin Jinnik take over? His skills weren't that good. Wouldn't Hunter Shin Junyong be a better choice? Suddenly a loudspeaker rang out, attracting everyone's attention. Haesong Association members. Haesong's voice rang out evenly. "Everyone must have heard the news, right? That's how it is." He took the microphone and calmly continued, "Our group is not that talented. We have done many dirty things." Haesong's voice still echoed, "But I can guarantee one thing." At the same time, at a branch company, 2 men received the wine sent by Haesong and said in surprise, "Who would have thought that the president would care about a small branch like us?" "That's right," he announced in a low voice, "everything was done for the good of Haesong, even though I stepped down like this because of my greed." Lee Hyeon crossed her arms and looked at the grumpy subordinate who spoke, "Hey, I told you to treat the presidential candidate well, right?" Haesong's voice echoed throughout the banquet hall. Haesong was now facing a huge change. The subordinate just sat there silently without responding. He was in the camera room, watching the screen intently as he said, "I apologize for making everyone listen to an incompetent commander all this time." He spoke loudly, raised his glass. The glasses containing red wine were raised at Haesong's words. They spoke excitedly, raised their glasses, and clinked their glasses together as they finished speaking. The people of Haesong Guild began to sip the wine in their hands. Lee Hyeon shook the glass of wine, preparing to bring it to her mouth to drink. Suddenly a strong hand stopped her hand. Lee Hyeon looked at Haesong's subordinate in surprise and asked, "What are you doing?" He did not answer her question but only reminded her in a low voice, "Don't drink." She asked in surprise, "What?" In just a moment the group had finished all the wine. The scarred man asked suspiciously, What will happen to the Haesong society now?" The mustachioed man clicked his tongue in praise. "This wine is quite good." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone in the banquet hall began to transform into horrible shapes. After just a few seconds of screaming in pain, they were transformed into animals with wrinkled fur and extremely scary shapes. They rushed out of the building with the withered corpse making a loud noise. The bodyguard standing downstairs saw the stones falling from the ceiling and shouted in panic, "What? Terrorism?" Headquarters, there was an explosion in the banquet hall. As soon as he finished making the announcement, a giant monster with long claws appeared on the stairs and rushed towards the bodyguard. Before he could regain his composure, all he could see was fresh blood splattered everywhere, soaking the walls next to him. Haesung in the camera room slowly said each word, "So please do your best one last time for me." He took the stone needle and stabbed it into his neck, saying in a harsh voice, "Peace has existed for too long, no one cares about its importance anymore." His skin began to dry up again, making cracking sounds. Haesung gritted his teeth and continued, "Anyone could become an awakened person now, so it seemed like they had forgotten the importance of strong hunters." After a while, his skin turned to stone. Haesung crushed the needle, his eyes turning vicious, his voice was horrifying. "That's why now is the time to bring back everyone's memories. Korea will return to the era of disaster." Modern skyscrapers began to collapse, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. People ran in all directions, screaming and running. A woman fell to the ground in fear, trembling, saying, "What the hell is going on? There are no hunting grounds or gates around here." From the tall buildings, monsters with strange shapes rushed out to attack people, causing them to scream in terror. So where did these monsters come from? The panicked cries of the people and the violent rumbling of the buildings grew louder. Sangu heard such a loud noise and sweated anxiously. This sound. The agent urgently announced, "The alarm is going off." Sangu quickly ordered, "Quickly evacuate to the basement." He gritted his teeth and said softly, "Haesung." Outside, fireballs were being dropped one by one to the ground. Monsters were flying everywhere in the sky. Sangu spoke angrily, "That bastard was crazier than I thought." A series of giant, burning meteorites crashed straight into the ground at high speed. The scene below was chaotic. Everyone was running around in fear, looking for a place to hide. A girl was running helplessly. "How do you want us to hide?" Sangu stood still, deep in thought. "Is it since my physical strength exceeded 40? Every time I run, my legs feel weaker. Even if I exert a little strength, my body starts to float. Even though my strength has doubled now, my habits haven't changed." At the same time, on the other side of the sky, another wave of fiery meteors continued to rush down. Jung Sangwoo estimated there were about 8 meteors. Jung Sangwoo crouched down low to gain momentum and jumped up. "Sometimes I get curious if I run at full speed." Jung Sangwoo's eyes were sharp, his face now cold. Enough. The buildings were shattered, debris flew everywhere. Jung Sangwoo didn't know when he had jumped into the air, and with a decisive sword strike, he cut the giant meteorite in half. Immediately after that, he quickly flipped and changed position, using the meteorite pieces as a support. He kept landing on each meteorite one by one and immediately destroyed them at breakneck speed. In no time the meteorites were completely shattered and lost all their power. While his two teammates saw this and were extremely surprised, a series of large meteorites turned into piles of rubble and fell to the ground. Seeing that everything was no longer dangerous, Jung Sangwoo finished and gently landed on the ground to observe the situation. The others who were struggling to deal with the meteorites also breathed a sigh of relief. He destroyed all the meteorites. One of them exclaimed in admiration. That person was. Jung Sangwoo turned his head with a serious expression and gave instructions. "The two of you should quickly go to the shelter. Even if someone knocks on the door, don't open it." Seeing the entire city almost completely destroyed, submerged in ruins, Junhyuk, Uhan's father, was shocked. "What's going on there?" He and Uhan both gasped in shock. "Shin Haesung, that crazy bastard." Before he finished speaking, Junhyuk jumped onto the railing, not forgetting to tell his daughter, "Uhan, you hide. Dad will go out." Uhan saw that and hesitated, intending to stop him. Suddenly, Jung Sangwoo's trusted comrade ran out of nowhere and opened the rooftop door. "Brother Uhan, come to the shelter quickly." Uhan's father breathed a sigh of relief and entrusted her. "There's a shelter, thank goodness. Uhan, please take care of her." Uhan saw her father preparing to leave and couldn't bear to say goodbye. "Father, don't get hurt." Junhyuk spoke confidently with a firm face. "Don't worry, this time Dad will return safely." Without waiting long, Jung Sangwoo's teammates pulled Uhan and ran away, only having time to call out twice, "Yes, Dad." Junhyuk got into a serious, battle-ready state. His eyes were cold, anger was screaming in his head. Haesung. At the same time, Haeyeon was walking around the academy campus, lost in thought. In the end, she still couldn't meet Oppa. He knew he was back, but why wasn't he at the academy? He skipped school as much as he wanted because his grades were always good. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from somewhere, making Haeyeon, who was bewildered and not understanding the situation, confused. This voice. Professor Wang Yunhai quickly gave the signal, "Everyone, run." At this moment, Haeyeon, who was hiding in the crowd, realized it was Professor Wang Yunhai. Haeyeon was surprised and confused. Why was everyone running? Before Haeyeon could finish speaking, a group of hideous monsters immediately rushed into the compound. Oh my god. The monsters were growing in number. They suddenly appeared from every corner of the city. This was an unexpected situation. A reporter quickly arrived at the scene and updated the situation. Monsters of unknown origin were flooding the city. The ugly monsters are approaching the living area, making many people afraid. The female reporter said that the army said that the underground hunting gate has been controlled, but even so, the number of monsters is still beyond expectation. The female reporter was still bravely commenting in front of the cameraman's lens, as if. Right behind her suddenly a giant monster bird swooped down while she was still predicting. This was another disaster, causing the cameraman to only have time to panic and scream. Behind her, behind. Suddenly a giant hand appeared, concentrating its magic power to strike. He immediately rushed forward and delivered a fatal blow, killing the monster bird in a flash. The female reporter and the cameraman were both stunned, mouths agape, speechless. As soon as the monster was dealt with, the female reporter suddenly shouted loudly, "Hunter Kim Junhyuk." Junhyuk stepped out from the smoke and spoke softly, "I acknowledge the bravery of you reporters, but please evacuate, this place is too dangerous." However, the reporter immediately became enthusiastic again. Something shocking had just happened. Hunter Junhyuk had just saved me. His skills were as strong as ever. Junhyuk was helpless when he saw this. "No, I was telling you to run." Another wave of giant, burning meteorites appeared. The reporter looked up with a slightly fearful face and continued to update the situation. Another meteorite. Junhyuk was also looking back, speaking softly and gently, "That's Haesong's skill. Let's evacuate this time, there won't be another chance." With that he jumped high into the air towards the meteorite. He quickly used his strength to smash the huge meteorite into many pieces. Junhyuk's eyes were cold but somewhat fearful. The size was completely incomparable to the previous ones. He had to destroy it quickly. Suddenly from the beginning a slash rang out, cutting the meteorites into pieces. Jung Sang-woo looked at Junhyuk below in confusion. "Huh? San Junhyuk, aren't you with Uhan?" The scene now changes to the academy. A demon-headed monster is roaring ferociously. Lee Hyeon was concentrating on dealing with that monster. She used her strength to move the chair and threw it towards the monster. Immediately after that, she gathered all her strength and threw a punch directly at its body. Haesong's subordinates were also trying their best to kill the remaining monsters. Fortunately, most of the monsters were running out of the building. He gave a decisive order to finish off the monster quickly. "We alone are enough here." After finishing off the monsters, Haesong's masked subordinate turned to the panting Hyeon. "Are you okay?" "Hyeon." The masked man said indifferently, "It's up to you whether you run or not, bye." Suddenly Hyeon rushed forward and grabbed his collar. Gritting his teeth, he threatened, "Hey, you know about this, right?" Without a hint of hesitation or fear, the masked man replied coldly, "Yes." It was his cold demeanor. Hyeon really felt sorry for her and screamed. He knew how to do it, but why didn't he stop that bastard Haesong? Haesong's subordinate remained unmoved and said in a low voice, "No one ordered me to do that." Before Hyeon's astonished eyes, the masked man gradually disappeared. "I was just following orders." Leaving Hyeon standing motionless in the middle of the room, the masked man had completely disappeared into the darkness. "I didn't care about the rest." Hyeon painfully sat down on the floor silently watching the dark shadow slowly disappear. She just kept covering her face and tormenting herself, confused. "Then why did you stop me from drinking it, you bastard?" At this time in a room, on the table were all the empty wineglasses and bottles lying around. John Scully was lying on the bed frowning in annoyance, his hand on his forehead cursing, "Bastards." He immediately forced himself to get up and picked up the phone to call and complain, "Hey, this is room 1302. It's been so noisy all this time, can you guys be quiet for a bit?" But the other end of the line didn't answer, only kept ringing. No one picked up, which made John Scully a bit confused. He immediately got up from bed and walked to the door, muttering to himself, "Are you kidding me? I thought the service was great, but this is a crappy business." As the door opened, a grotesque monster caught John Scully's eye. The monster screamed savage sounds and charged straight at John Scully. But before it could act, it was dealt a devastating blow. John Scully, the blessed S-rank hunter, John Scully, one hand in his pocket, a puzzled expression on his face, said in frustration, "What the hell is this? Is there a gate open nearby? Jumper, that bastard, how dare he suggest this place to me?" Junhyuk launched a series of attacks at the monsters. In no time he quickly cleaned up those monsters. Jung Sang-woo couldn't help but sigh in shock. He wasn't called an S-rank candidate for nothing. Seeing how he easily defeated all the A-rank monsters was truly impressive. Junhyuk turned his head to Jung Sang-woo and asked, "It seems like we've finished dealing with this area. Are there any people who haven't been evacuated yet?" He replied immediately, "I estimate there aren't many left. We have to go find Haesong to quickly end this mess." Junhyuk seemed to suddenly remember something and hesitantly spoke, "Oh right." He was silent for a moment, staring at his palms. Junhyuk's eyes became thoughtful and quiet. He spoke in a low voice, "Hunter Jung Sang-woo, I have a few questions for you." Jung Sang-woo quickly replied, "Sorry, I wanted to ask." Junhyuk's question left Jung Sang-woo speechless. "How much time do I have left?" He smiled a wry, reassuring smile. "Not much, I suppose, if I could ask you a favor." Elsewhere, monsters were still rampaging. "The guards are fighting them hard, platoon leader. At this rate, the monsters will be overloaded. The platoon nearby is also having the same problem. Just keep your formation for me." A monster rushed forward and killed the guard before his comrade could finish his sentence. He knew exactly what would happen if this place. The monsters continued to advance. The guards died, a portal appeared. The next wave of monsters slowly emerged. The people are listening to the news in fear and despair. One by one, the guard posts that guard the hunting grounds are falling. The situation is getting out of control. Monsters have come out of the portal, so if you live near one of the hunting grounds, please move immediately to the nearest shelter. Jung Sang-woo's mother worriedly asked her husband, "Honey, will Sang-woo and Ji-woo be okay?" He tried to reassure her, "Trust Sang-woo, What we need to do now is keep ourselves safe so that Sangu can fight with peace of mind. There was a loud banging on the door and a scream, "Is anyone there? Please help us, open the door." A reply came from inside, "Enter the code." The man was confused, "Password, but I don't live here." The monster corpses fell on the ground. The cat-eared girl raised her eyebrows and asked softly, "Crazy, you said this isn't a portal explosion, right?" The man beside her replied, "Yes, but according to the report, another round of losses is coming because the monsters have invaded and attacked the nearby defense platoon. People are running to evacuate." The monster must have appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the city. The starting point of this incident was also in the city center, near the Haesong Guild. The cat-eared girl added hesitantly, "Haesong was also the one who instructed the Dep on how to produce the medicine." The man was sweating profusely, his eyes filled with disbelief. Could it be Haesong and his gang? The cat-eared girl also lowered her eyes in concern. If that was true, then we would have a real problem. Young Gyuchul was probably only a B rank, but he ended up transforming into an A rank monster. Besides, how many A rank hunters were there in the Haesong Guild? The man suddenly became absent-minded and looked away. Seeming to detect something was wrong, the girl hesitated. What if those A rank hunters all turned into monsters? The monsters' footsteps were getting closer and closer towards the two of them. A giant monster with long brown hair appeared. The cat-eared girl with a cautious face gently reminded, "Be careful, that monster." In a flash the monster shot past the two. When he leisurely turned his head to look back, the two people's bodies were covered with slashes that were bleeding simultaneously. Just as the man's sister accidentally ran past, she widened her eyes in surprise and let out a hum sound. She ran towards her brother crying, not knowing that the monster was right behind her. She shouted, "Oppa." Meanwhile at the academy, everyone was struggling to fight the monsters. Yunhai gathered all his strength and kicked the monster away. Haeyeon was not far behind. She launched a shot that pierced through the remaining monster. Yunhai breathed heavily as he looked at Haeyeon beside him. "Hey, I told you to run too." Haeyeon's eyes focused as she spoke softly. "We have to buy time for the people to evacuate." Soken breathed heavily and shouted loudly, "I've reached my limit. My power is useless against these bastards." Doin immediately replied, "So you're planning to run away? Do you have any dignity left?" Soken still couldn't calm down and gritted his teeth to speak, but looking at the current situation, the monsters kept charging in. In the moment Soken lost focus, a monster jumped at him, causing Doin beside him to only have time to scream, "Idiot." Haeyeon seemed to be tired too, her eyes wavered, "Too crowded, who is it?" Haeyeon was clearly exhausted and silently prayed, "Please, please save us." At the shelter, Jung Sangwoo's close comrade sat next to Uhan. She was sitting with her face in her hands and sobbing. His worried-looking teammate gently consoled him, "Are you okay?" Uhan covered her face and choked up, "I hate this weak body. The situation outside is getting worse. My father is out there saving people and I can't do anything." The teammate beside him also replied with concern, "Me too, but you don't need to worry too much." He gave a gentle smile to calm the crying Uhan. "The hunters are stronger than we think. We may be at a disadvantage right now, but a counterattack is only a matter of time." The scene changes to where the monster was about to kill the man's sister when suddenly a green shield appears. The younger sister burst into tears, her mouth wide open, unable to speak. What a blessing. John Scully suddenly appeared to save the girl's life and then reminded her to step back. He thought with a serious face and muttered to himself, "It seems to be around A rank or low S rank, although it would be a bit too much for me to fight alone." He struck a powerful blow that sent the monster flying. John Scully looked troubled. "I mean, there was that one in Korea, the kid who used the clone. How the hell did he leave a piece of shit wandering around the streets like this?" As the monsters were about to attack Haeyeon, someone suddenly made them explode. An unfamiliar voice called out, "Is this the school Jung Sangwoo attends?" Yunhai immediately narrowed his eyes and asked, "Who are those people?" Number 10 continued to talk to his comrades without paying any attention. They were also stalling for time for the people to evacuate. Even the students here had a kind heart like Sangwoo. The guys with excited faces started introducing themselves. "We are the hunters who assist Jung Sangwoo. This is the road Sangwoo often takes. It's so cool, just like I thought. The school that the most excellent hunter attends is truly top-notch. We're here to get rid of the insects that pollute this place." Number 10 continued with an excited expression, "To turn this place into a holy land. Rest assured, you guys are safe." At Jung Sangwoo's place, he was helplessly searching every corner. "There's no one here. No, I mean, there's no one here." Jung Sangwoo struggled with a pained expression. "Where the hell is Haesong hiding? Stop using stealth, come out and fight, coward." He sat down and cursed, "Damn it." He stopped making noise and silently recalled Junhik's words, "Probably not much, so I want to ask you for a favor." And he immediately regained his composure and reminded himself, "Okay, we have to find him quickly. This is not the time to catch these monsters." He frowned and looked at his comrades seriously. "They are stronger than they look. These monsters have existed before." A soldier immediately said, "This is the first time I have seen them." Jung Sangwoo was tired. There would be more meteors falling. Let's go back to Haesong. From behind, a deep male voice called out, "Jung Sangwoo." Junyoung's face was long and sad, her mouth moving. "What's going on here? Did my father do all of this?" Jung Sangwoo looked back with regret, momentarily speechless. "Junyoung. Junyoung slowly walked over and handed Sangu something, saying softly, "This is in my room." A mysterious test tube is sealed tightly. Junyoung frowned with a pained look in her eyes. It was the final product without the monsterization side effect. It came with a note that said it had the ability to destroy my curse. Jung Sangwoo's eyes began to waver. His eyes were filled with anger, but that meant that the other depths could turn into monsters. Sangwoo bowed his head and couldn't help but think, so the monsters everywhere are now members of the Haesong Guild. I had my suspicions, but is it really Depp? When he vaguely understood everything, Junyoung couldn't hold back her tears and bit her lips, sobbing, so her father was really behind it all. Jung Sangwoo just stood there, speechless. That. Hyeon gently stepped forward to interrupt the conversation. He was right, his father did it because I was in the center of that hell. Jung Sangwoo was stunned speechless. She, Junyoung, was also embarrassed and only dared to call out once, "Captain Hyeon." Hyeon approached, her eyes cold as she gritted her teeth. This was not the time to cry. That bastard Haesong had come up with a plan even more disgusting than this, his target. At this moment in the laboratory, Haesong was happily basking in the enormous power he had successfully researched. The meteorite's destructive power and range had been greatly expanded. Haesong's face broke into a sinister smile. The power far surpassed before. I could feel the power I had been pursuing for so long. And as the sun sets, the night is coming. When the dark night had fallen over the transformer station, the workers on guard suddenly looked bewildered. Hey, that's it. A giant meteorite suddenly appeared. It crashed straight into the transformer station, destroying everything. Immediately the city was hit by a power outage. Everything was plunged into darkness. The sound of a power outage echoed through the city hospital. The doctor quickly reassured the patient's family, "Calm down, the hospital had an emergency generator." The patient's family became frantic and urged, "Quickly take the patient to the emergency room." Sona frowned as she observed the situation and thought to herself, "There are too many people rushing in, I can't remember each of them." In the hospital where the generator room was running, Haesong's masked subordinate suddenly appeared from the shadows. As the doctors were preparing to perform an emergency surgery, the power suddenly went out. What? Everyone was in a panic and rushed to see what was going on. What was going on? It seemed like the generator had gone out. ICU quickly checked the ICU room. It was then that Sangwoo's younger sister, Jiwoo, began to have difficulty breathing. Sangwoo's face paled as he hissed softly, "What?" One anxious clone hesitantly announced, "Sorry, I can't block the generator side because I have to block the meteor on the roof right now. The hospital has a power outage." Hyeon clenched her teeth, unable to contain her anger. "Really, we're late." Jung Sangwoo fell into a state of extreme fear. His mouth stammered, "No, no, Jiwoo." A rough hand gently placed on Jung Sangwoo's shoulder. Shin Junyoung spoke with a serious face to reassure him. "What can you do if you go to the hospital now? Everyone has their own role." After saying that, Shin Junyoung thought for a long time, then quietly placed his index finger on Jung Sangwoo's arm. Sangwoo looked at the map that appeared before his eyes in shock. Then Shin Junyoung continued, the location of Haesong." Shin Junyoung turned around and looked at Jung Sangwoo, entrusting him, "I'll go to the hospital. Jung Sangwoo, please stop my father, I won't blame you no matter what you do." At the shelter, Jung Sangwoo's teammates' eyes were glued to his phone screen in amazement. How could Depp be the cause of this? His face was filled with shock as he received the message. The monster's nature is a mutated Depp, originally a member of the Haesong Society. "I'll go stop Haesong, Sangwoo." Uhan sitting next to him asked softly, "So those monsters didn't come out from the gate?" His teammate, still surprised, replied, "That's right." Uhan fell into deep thought again. Suddenly the door of the guest shelter moved. Everyone around became flustered, wondering to each other, "Are there still people who haven't entered the building? I don't know, who is it?" A man's figure appeared and called out as the door opened, Uhan. She opened her eyes wide in surprise and called out loudly, "Dad." At the same time at the hospital, the generator melted down in an unusual way. The electrician was stunned. "This can't be fixed, it's melted." The woman next to him kept pleading, "Can't you do something? Just a little bit." Shin Junyoung suddenly appeared and spoke seriously, "This is the hospital transmitter, right? Move aside." The female employee stared at Shin Junyoung, knocked knee and asked, "Are you a hunter?" The electrician beside him hurriedly stopped him. "Wait, you can't touch it carelessly. Even if you touch it, the energy won't return." Holding the test tube in his hand, Shin Junyoung replied firmly, "Don't worry, I have a skill." Then he injected the test tube into himself. A system panel appeared, "Weak Great Mage, all stats are 0.2. Haesong was secretly happy at that time and muttered, "This, Jung Sangwoo won't be able to act for a while." The old man smirked with glee. There was no one at the captain level left who could stop the mutated monster, so should we liven things up a bit? Suddenly, the door of Haesong's laboratory was hit by a very strong force. The huge door was immediately flung open. Haesong's face was expressionless. When his voice dropped, "What a surprise, I didn't think you would come here." Jung Sangwoo looked straight at Haesong with murderous eyes. He found him. He smiled wickedly and asked sarcastically, "Is your sister okay? I heard the hospital is very busy." Jung Sangwoo suppressed his anger and replied, "I already have someone there. You're the problem I have to deal with now, Haesong." Haesong looked at Sangwoo mockingly, challenging him, "Do you think you can do it?" Sangwoo gritted his teeth and glared at Haesong. On the contrary, he was the one who should have stopped me. Jung Sangwoo swung his sword hard at Haesong, his face full of pain as he thought to himself. Apparently he used DEB, the finished product without the monsterization side effects.